Welcome everyone. Today is Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024, and this is a meeting of the Senior Center Site Selection and Building Committee. This meeting will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please know that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting or hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast, unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom. The public may access the proceedings by joining Zoom meeting ID 375-414-6055 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager, at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100, prior to the meeting. So welcome, everyone. I call us to order at 6:04 p.m. And has everyone had a chance to look over the agenda? Are there any proposed amendments? I'm going to turn on this back TV. Oh, no, wrong one. That's the wrong TV. Oh, that's wrong video. Now I'm messing it up. Okay, so this one?
You broke it. You broke it.
That one should go. Let me.
I thought this was the remote. I just can't see that one when I'm sitting there.
Yep. Alright. I think you have to log back in.
Okay.
On this, and then I'll get that one.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't realize until I sat down it wasn't on. I think you just turned me back off again.
No.
Oops. Stay tuned, technical difficulties. While we're waiting, everybody can read. Dennis just put on the table the April 10th minutes. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's my fault. Is there a little remote?
You did? Where are they?
If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Oh wait, is it that one right there?
That's it.
It's just a whole lot easier for me to see when someone has their hand raised from that TV. Okay.
So I think, yeah, you might have to log back in.
Okay, I don't know this one's password. If you do.
Mondo.
I always mess it up. That's why I keep it in here. Sorry about that.
This is for you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right, awesome.
Just log back on.
Yep.
Okay.
Do I need to read the thing again?
No, I would just say that you're back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Recording in progress.
Oh, perfect. Okay, it all came back. Okay, great. All right, so now we're back.
You just
Sorry.
want to turn, I think, unmute
Yep,
yourself
yep.
and the video. Yep.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your patience, everyone, for our technological difficulty. We are back and ready to resume the meeting. So can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All right,
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. So and the motion passes. The next order of business is the draft minutes from April 10th. Dennis just handed these out. Does everyone want time to review them for the next meeting?
That's fine with me. I mean, to review them for the next meeting is fine with me. If people-
Okay.
I don't want people to feel rushed. And just so, it was an extended conversation about the architect selection process and who said what and who, so I wanted to abbreviate it without belaboring it too much. So I did the best I could, but if people feel like there are points there that should be added or, I would certainly understand that.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to table to the next meeting?
Well, 429 isn't here on the current agenda, the 410, oh, no.
It is, yep.
410.
410, yep.
It's
Okay,
up to you.
I'll make a motion that the Senior Center Site Selection and Building Committee table the approval of the minutes of April 10th until the next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Right?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Wonderful. That'll give us time to look it over. All right. Number 3 is updates on due diligence for the town-owned sites. Mr. Town Manager, do you want to provide an update on, or do you want me to? Okay, that's it. That's it. So the only remaining item was setting up a meeting with the superintendent of schools to begin the conversation about use of Groton Harvard Road, and that meeting has been scheduled. So that will be on Friday. There will be a subset of our group, so we don't have to reconvene the whole thing. And so then we'll look forward to having having that discussion.
Could you reiterate how it, what town council's findings were regarding the Groton Harvard parcel and what the administrative requirements would be
Sure.
should we choose to try to access it?
Right. So the parcel that is called 115 Washington Street, which is the larger school complex, the piece we're interested in is down on the Groton Harvard Road side, near the practice field, but not interfering with the practice field. So that land is when it was when the lease was created, it is town of Ayer owned land, but operation came under the jurisdiction of the school committee at that time. So town council's opinion was that in order to carve out a separate parcel for the use by the senior center, it would require an agreement between the select board and the school committee to break the existing lease, then a vote of Ayer only, just the Ayer town meeting, to decide to use that piece of the land for to revert it back to municipal use versus school use, and then the school committee and the select board could re-enter into a new lease. So, and as it was described to me, is that some pieces of that could be very procedural, like all in sequence together. So.
And the school committee, I'm sorry, and the upcoming meeting is with the school committee or the school superintendent?
The school superintendent, just to start that conversation.
Just to be clear, I think, Robert, wasn't the original deed found that referred to it as going to the school department,
I'm sorry.
not the school committee?
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because the school committee now is made up of different people from 2 different towns. So it's not, in essence, the school committee, it's a little tricky, the language is a little tricky.
Right.
So,
Come join us.
just real quick.
So through the chair, good evening. So procedurally, yes, the land, the whole 115 Washington on research, it is under the care of the school department at the time. So the opinion of town council is if this was to be a site, procedurally, what would have to happen is the school committee would have to take a vote to declare this piece of property, which we would have to define with a formal, survey, so as surplus.
Surplus.
And then town meeting only for Ayer, not for Shirley, because it is in Ayer. Town meeting would also have to affirm that with a vote. And then that land would be as defined for municipal purposes for the senior center. So the first step is a discussion with the superintendent of schools to sort of start that sort of process, ultimately depending on what the town decides to do. But the nutshell is we'd have to define the parcel through a survey. School committee would have to take a vote, and town meeting would have to approve that. And then that would be the procedure in a nutshell.
And so, meeting with the superintendent is an effort to kind of get the lay of the land in terms of where his interests may or may not lie with regard to that. I'm just trying to, is there the distinction between the school committee, and the school superintendent, and to what extent he may or may not accurately reflect the needs of, the desires of the school committee in total, or just trying to get the lay of the land as he sees it?
Yeah, through the chair, it would be just an initial discussion on the due diligence. Ultimately, what still would have to happen procedurally, in my opinion, is this committee would have to recommend a site. Say you recommended that site to the select board.
Yep.
Then discussions would have to be initiated between the select board and the school committee, and a vote would have to be taken. And then if that vote was affirmative, we'd have to, go to town meeting with that.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is just the sort of the first step in that process, and I think you're correct in what you said, is to sort of gauge, at least from the superintendent, in terms of the school's program and property and so forth, is to get a sense of the viability, of this. Obviously, if there's just a sense of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't really want to do a lot of the assessments unless we knew that the school system was open to this, right?
Correct. Correct.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
thanks.
All right. So I like to see that, good forward progress on both of those. So then, number 4 is updates to the vacant board seat.
Do you want to go over the other sites or just?
I guess we could. We did talk about it at the last one. The outstanding due diligence item for Bishop Road was the gate. That was the first level, right? And so we did have, didn't we talk about this? I think we did at the last meeting. We can repeat it. There was a successful meeting with Mass Development, and they considered it basically a no-brainer to move the gate back further on Bishop Road, so that a potential senior center site would be accessible all the time, because the gate is there. The gate was placed there by the Army in the 70s, right?
The 50s or 60s?
50s or 60s, to reduce teenage drag racing along the road, and then it's just used now for the flooding, but there's no reason, because the flooding is nowhere near the site that we're considering, it could move back. So I guess there is the outstanding part of that is the follow-up with Mass Development, because they were going to speak with Fish and Wildlife about the migratory patterns, just to make sure that, to determine whether the gate could be relocated to just past the DPW's land, or whether it could go to the other side of the triangle piece of land down by the pollinator garden. So
for the purposes of this committee's work, the gate isn't there, for lack of a better terminology,
Right.
and we can proceed looking at Bishop Road, that we will have access to it without issue.
yes.
And did they, the question as to moving the gate further all the way down, or that's just not really on the radar. That is putting the gate somewhere else further down at the intersection between Bishop and McPherson, or?
Right, so where it would be moved to was more of an issue of them checking in with Fish and Wildlife to determine. But either way, as long as it moves to the far end of the DPW's property, that suits the needs of this project. You know, if it could go further down, there's obviously benefits to that from a nature appreciation perspective, but that's beyond the scope of this committee.
That was 1973, was
Okay.
that article about that gate.
All right, great.
So did they say when they're gonna report back to us about Fish and Wildlife?
I believe they said it would take 2 or 3 weeks. They were going to spec out the cost of it. So that time we're coming pretty close to that. So would your
We'll
office be,
follow up.
okay.
Yeah, we're just at the 3-week mark. Yep.
Yeah, just for one more item on that, their agenda. They needed to determine where they were gonna relocate the gate, the impact of its location regarding the wetlands. So depending on the complexity of the relocate, where it's gonna end up and how close it was to wetlands, they would have to decide with the Devon's Enterprise Commission whether they needed to go through, what kind of application they would have to go to put it near, closer to wetlands.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah,
if
that's
they
right.
move
Yeah.
it, no matter where they move it, they're gonna be closer to wetlands than it is now. And so as a result of that, it may be a simple application, which gets an executive approval, or it may be a more full-fledged application where they have to have a hearing and whatnot. That was kind of the thing they were waiting on.
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So, Madam Chair, and this kind of had, the issue about the railroad tracks, I know that we had some brief conversations about to what extent crossing that, in what adaptations may or may not be required. And I don't know the answer to that. I did go down Fitchburg Road and look at where the railroad tracks cross Fitchburg Road, and which is a much more heavily traveled road. I mean, there is frequent, reasonably high-speed traffic going down Fitchburg Road all the time. And there is no gate crossing, I think that, I'm not sure what you call it,
It's a siding, I think. I
yeah,
don't think it's
the
an active
railroad
track.
siding is used by the lumber yard on the other side of Fitchburg Road. All of this to say that it doesn't appear that the railroad tracks crossing Bishop Road there would be a significant impediment to traffic going down Bishop Road and its effect on Park Street.
Yeah, if they don't have it or don't need it or require it on Fitchburg, I agree with you, that probably makes sense. And then I guess ultimately that's the railroad's responsibility to determine if they need something there, so. All right, yeah. Any other, and I don't think there was any due diligence for the Brook Street property, right? Okay. Oh, and the issue of if, for Bishop Road, we would need to get into utilities, which I figure we can talk about a little bit more when we're going through the rating matrix. But I don't think there was anything that needed to be determined right now, whether to red light or green light the site as an option. Okay. In terms of the vacant board seat, there was an application interest submitted that was from Jim Pinard. So I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to make it tonight. Otherwise, I believe the select board is at the June 4th meeting. He can attend that, and they can, ask him the same interview questions, and then, appoint him at that time.
Was he one of the ones that had originally?
No.
So this is a new person.
Yep. So that is great. The more the merrier. Good to have a full committee again soon. All right, so I think that brings us into what I think is going to be kind of the meat of our meeting tonight, which is the discussion of the senior center program needs. And this should also say, and the resultant site matrix that comes from it. So in in your packet, everyone should have, that's that color coded. I guess everyone has it except for me. Hang on. Yeah, the color coded, no, I have it up, yep. Looks like this with the different rooms. This is sort of the starting point. Document was provided by Catlin Architecture to take a look at the different kinds of spaces that the senior center may want to have. They're color coded by the type of use that they are. And as he explained during our last meeting, that this flows through nicely because you can group them together by use, like red are all public programming spaces, you know, and then in purple's office spaces, the light purple is the kitchen, then you've got sort of the storage and mechanical areas. And then as we begin talking about what this building would look like, the drawings of it will have, the preliminary drawings will have those color-coded rooms. So you can see how close are the program rooms to the restrooms. And you can tell that just by color as well. And you can kind of shift things around based on that. So I did ask Catlin for the same documents for Wilbraham and North Andover, which most everybody on the committee has seen one or the other. And they were their preliminary ones as well, so there are some changes to those, but the gist of it is that we're kind of right in the middle. What they're proposing is slightly larger than North Andover space, because if you remember the people that saw North Andover, it's really sandwiched in to a very tight space, and then slightly smaller than what Wilbraham was proposed for them. So everyone, I think, had this from the last meeting. Did anybody have any thoughts about that as they were looking through it?
Well, do we have any idea yet in terms of the administrative areas, how much staffing we would have? Because you would,
Right.
they're looking at 3 people at the reception desk plus 6 in administration.
Right, so that would be me, the outreach coordinator, what we currently have is me, the dining services coordinator, the van coordinator, the outreach coordinator, and the town social worker. So there are currently 5 of us. And of those 6, like, they're not all 6 identical workstations, right? For the folks that went to Wilbraham and then also in North Andover, there were some workstations, like open work desks kind of in the middle of it. There was the reception where the greeters were sitting, and then some open, more flexible workspaces, and then there were 2 or 3 offices in the back, to add up to that total number. So,
I'm sorry, would you just repeat? You had a director, the outreach coordinator, the dining coordinator, the van coordinator, the social worker, and was there one more?
and yeah, so director, dining services, van coordinator, outreach worker, and social worker. So there's 5 existing,
Okay.
right?
Didn't you say that you were thinking about adding a veterans agent room too? Or is that just gonna be a shared workspace? Or should we add another in so that you have the space
Right.
rather than trying to jam it in later?
So that would be, so we have 5 existing and this plan shows 6, so that would incorporate the veterans agent if we chose to do that. Another option that I have seen in other senior centers is when they're designing the kitchen, they leave a piece of it flexible so that sometimes the dining person can end up having their office actually in the kitchen, which is quite practical, if the front end administrative needs grow. So I think 6 would be okay, especially when you have 3 people at a 3-person reception desk area. That's a lot of people there. You could have someone folding newsletters. You can have a greeter and a phone answerer. I mean, that's plenty of space.
So how many, like, standalone offices are you envisioning? Presumably 1 for you, 1 for the social worker?
One
and-
for the outreach coordinator.
and one for the outreach. So when we're looking for square feet per person, you're thinking 3 standalone offices, and then the other 3 or 4 people will be kind of sharing some common space within the
Right.
administrative area. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I think it would, at least based on current use, if we move the veterans agent over, which again, that's not my call to make, that would come from town hall. So, but I don't, he's not a full-time employee, and the social worker is also not with us full-time, so I could see a situation where you could have, they could share an office, but have opposite schedules, so that they wouldn't be occupying the space at the same time. So they wouldn't be sharing a desk. They'd be sharing an office and use it at different times. And I think that works well for the dining coordinator and the van coordinator as well, because they also won't sit at a desk 40 hours a week. So that gives flexibility there.
So I have a question about the veterans agent. I'm not exactly sure how to frame the question, but do we get outside funds from from the government, from the federal government, for that agent and the space that they need?
That's a good question. I don't know that. Do you happen to know?
Yeah, I'll just, through the chair to Carolyn, yes, we receive, I have to check, we do receive some state funds for the veteran agent, and we also have a memorandum of agreement. We provide veteran services to Devon, so Mass Development sends us a small amount of money, but I could get the specifics. We do receive some money from the state and from Mass Development.
So it seems like, they should financially support putting that office in the COA center.
You mean you would want their support in order to move them, in addition to just
Right.
space management from town manager's office?
So
Is that what you're
correct me if
saying?
I'm
Or you're
wrong.
saying you want them to kick in some money to move their office over there?
Not to move it,
Oh.
to just be there.
Right.
Space.
Like rent?
Yeah.
Well, I think whatever money the town is receiving to house, facilitate the work of, to have office space available for the veterans agent will move from town hall, this building, to the new building, if that is where the veterans agent is housed. Is that the?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, that seems reasonable, but that would be something that obviously we'd have to look into and research. I don't know how any of that is structured now, but that's a good thing to look into.
Also, you had mentioned that, I don't know if it was the Disability Commission or whatever, was looking for a location to store equipment that could be loaned out. And would that require staffing?
So when I met with them, do you want me to talk?
Basically, what we're looking to do is receive items that are useful. Say someone passes away or they outgrow their equipment. They have a walker or a wheelchair or canes or a shower chair or something like that. We're looking to receive that as a donation, clean it up, and then if somebody was having trouble getting it funded through their insurance or they didn't have insurance, they could contact the Council on Aging and say, we're looking for this, and they would direct them to the Disabilities Commission, and then we would see if we had that item that they're looking for in stock or available, and then we would clean it up and coordinate with the Council on Aging and that person to get it to them.
So are you seeing this as a volunteer position
Yes.
of one of your members?
Volunteer position.
Okay,
For the
so you're
most
not
part.
looking for staffing?
No.
And that would be a great example of, at first you think, well, what would we do with 3 chairs at the reception area? Well, if we had one person that's the COA volunteer employee answering phones, one person who's assisting, or, like during tax season, we always have 2 people at the front. Well, during the times when the Disabilities Commission is doing their lending program, they would have a spot then to sit and
Yeah,
gather there. And, yeah. So,
good.
all right.
In the square, I know that John, Mr. Catlin had mentioned that in terms of the space needed to house that, I mean, that equipment can get pretty big pretty fast, from what he seemed to think.
Yeah.
Like, he was thinking just something the size of a garage.
Yes.
Which I just looked up just now is 240 square feet.
24 by 24, yeah.
And that would be, that needs to be added to these numbers here,
Garage.
or not?
Yeah, it's 24 by
Garage,
10.
That's right, I got a two-guy
Yeah,
garage,
yeah.
sorry.
Okay,
So that's, yeah, that would be, I added equipment rental room as my line number 27, and I put
Oh, I see.
240 on there.
yeah.
Well,
That would-
then, I guess the question is similar. So, we'll be expanding the facility to accommodate that. Are there funds from Disabilities Commission to,
I have no idea. We are we're a town board, so I would assume if we needed money, the town would be, you'd just be taking money from the town and redirecting it to another part of the town.
so there's no funding like this from the other governmental agencies or anything?
So that would have to be, and again, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but
Way ahead.
way ahead of ourselves. But all of this to say that the building, we're looking at an additional 250 square feet or so to kind of expand the possible uses of the center.
But
I mean, that's significant. I mean, that's really significant.
$1,000 a foot, that's 250,000 for a garage.
All right, yeah, good point.
Yeah, that's significant.
Okay. Yeah, so, I mean, all right, do we want to get, no, we don't want to go down the, how much is all this going to cost yet?
Let's work on what we need first.
I think the thing that's important here is the assumptions that Mr. Catlin has made for the square footages seem to make sense. So, an average office is like 10 by 12, he's got 125 square feet, so, it's what an average office size is. If you need 6 offices, that's 750. And then he's basically figuring, people just sitting in an open space at 75 square feet apiece, which is, what's that, 8 by 10 or something like that?
9 by 8 is 72, so.
Yeah, so, when we went to the buildings that we saw, these administrative areas were typically secure. The ones we saw had a door into the area. So the people who were in the area were somewhat secure. And then there was a counter space of some sort. The people worked with the public, and then in the rear there were offices. When he shows us the concept plan, it's probably what we're gonna see, something along those lines. So I think the way to approach it is just to say, look, if we agree that it takes whatever those two together are 1,000 square feet, then that's it. And we can only give them 1,000 square feet. I'd rather come up with a number that says we're only gonna dedicate to administration 1,000 square feet. And
Gotcha.
figure out how to use it, rather than
Right.
say, well, we got so many people that each need a
Yeah.
space. I'd say,
Right,
I'd like
okay.
to define that we're only gonna, that's worth 1,000 square feet to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
for that.
yeah.
It's my recollection that there were only maybe 4 offices that were private in those.
Yes,
The
3 maybe,
director
yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think 3.
and then several people worked at just a workstation.
Right.
That was
Exactly.
a thing, so they didn't have to have walls and
Right.
all of that.
Does this allow for, what is our 5-year down the road, 10 years down the road? What is our staffing, what does the projected staffing look like? And does that fit in this frame? Or should we be thinking 10 years down the road, you're gonna need 1,200 square feet of office space because you're gonna add some other
Right.
service
make a
or something
provision
in
for
there,
it.
make provisions so that,
A spare office.
as opposed to, this is what we have now, and now we have no room to expand or grow what's going on in the administrative area. It's almost, to me, it would almost make sense to maybe add one office, even if it wasn't planned on being used now,
I mean,
so that you could have something to grow into in the future as opposed to pigeonholing yourself into this is all we can do.
So at both North Andover and Wilbraham, they had 2 or 3 offices. Like imagine if it was this room, let's say. The reception was sitting across a long counter, and then the middle space was sort of an open, flexible space. There were workstations that had 2 desks at them. They could have had 4, but they had 2. You know, you could have slotted people in a little tighter, and then a copier on the other side, and some flexible space in the middle so that people could come and go and not bump into each other. And then across the back were the 2 or the 3 offices. So I would see that space as a very flexible spot, because I agree with you. If we say there's 6 administrative, we have 5 now. If we move the veterans agent over, that would fill it. If I were to look at my longer term plan, it would be hiring a part or full-time administrative assistant, in which case that person would sit in one of these 3 reception desk seats. And then the next staff member that I would want to hire would be a program coordinator. And that person could sit in one of, not the reception desk areas, but in the flexible office space in the middle, because from experience, that person very rarely gets to sit at a desk. They're up and moving through the rooms, setting them up, knocking them down, gathering stuff. So I would put that in the category, as well as the van coordinator and the dining services coordinator, people who are going to they need a space for their computer, they need a space for their supplies, but they won't sit there more than 2 or 3 hours a day. So if they have
I'm thinking more of
cubby
a security aspect. Is there anything like, if I'm talking with the program coordinator, do I need a space where this is a one-on-one, and if I'm talking to you, I don't want the 3 other people around me hearing, like if I'm coming in to say, my kid broke his leg and I need.
Right. So those spaces, that would be the director's office, the outreach coordinator, the social worker, and then the veterans agent. And so, I suppose we could say that we want a little bit more space in here, but I think the ones that have the 3 offices would meet. Then I can't foresee a situation where we would have more than one outreach coordinator. I guess it's always possible that the social work department would expand, but then that would be outside of the scope of the senior center anyway.
Yeah, we have this tension between wanting to make it efficient and not too, and cost effective, versus all the dreams that we might want for it.
Yeah.
I think I think we have to allow that there will be sufficient space for confidential conversations should that need arise. Mm-hmm. And be mindful of that. Perhaps if the social worker schedule, that the conference room may be available now because the conference room isn't being used for, particularly mm-hmm. large meetings, so now you can use that for confidential, or however that works out. Right. But I think his point is well taken, that having adequate space for confidential conversations is going to be necessary, and I think that's something that we should be aware of.
And
excuse me, go ahead.
I was going to say, and one fallback for that is that there is the wellness room and nurse's office, which becomes kind of an overflow area for not constant need, but intermittent need. So that is helpful.
All right. Until we see the blueprint and can see how I think it'll be easier then to see how he's divvied out this space and whether or not we feel it's flexible enough, and.
One of the things that was interesting about even this calculation here, when you look at the bottom, happens to be the way Catlin approaches it visually, and as you saw in Wilbraham. He tries to control the size of the common areas by having them blended in with the corridors. Mm-hmm. But it does take up quite a bit of open space. You feel like you're in an open area, which is what you want to feel. You feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. And so the admin is almost set aside, in a corner, mm-hmm. more or less, for privacy and for, the flow doesn't go through the admin is what I'm getting at. The flow is out in the middle of the space, in the corridors and stuff. So that's what he comes up with is, about this factor is about 20%. So when you figure that out, that's, he's got like almost 3,000 square feet of common, in the it's 12 to 14.3. But that's where that open feeling comes from. Where one with a corridor and a bunch of offices on either side does not give you that comfortable, open feeling. So it's tricky, a little tricky the way it's
Yeah.
nice the way he approaches it.
Yeah,
And in terms of the kitchen, so the dining coordinator, it may be possible to have the dining coordinator in the kitchen, and I know that we've talked some about having somebody operate, a chef, perhaps part-time, for actually cooking the food or preparing the food,
Right.
preparing meals. So there, as,
That would be the same person though.
oh, it's the same person, okay.
Right, so the dining coordinator is right now a 24 hours a week.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a considered full-time benefited position, even though it's 24 hours. It's over the 19 hours. So while we can't cook in our kitchen, we have the dining coordinator because we've needed someone to run the lunch program. They're not a chef, that staff member, because they don't need to be. But and they don't need to be a chef in the new building either. They just need to have food service experience. So I would foresee that person, they would just be in the kitchen a whole lot more because they would be chopping, prepping, doing dishes, things like that they don't do.
So the dining coordinator would become the chef?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm using that word loosely because chef is like a certification.
No, I
So,
understand.
yeah, okay, yeah.
So,
yeah.
all right.
So are they certified and all of that?
Yes, yep. Yeah.
And just for the public's,
Yes, let me say that publicly, yes.
Okay.
Yes now and yes then.
It is important that the person who's running the kitchen should be in that general area anyway, because we've got deliveries, you've got a lot going on back there.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So there's some flexibility
It almost
in
makes perfect
these.
sense
Yeah.
to be a small office back. Doesn't
Right.
have to be much. Just-
Yeah.
Typically, that's what you see.
Yeah, often you can
Everywhere
have
you
like
go.
a stainless steel table
There's a small
back there, small
So
space.
perhaps we
back
could
there.
use the word cook.
All right, cook. Yeah, I mean the position is called dining coordinator.
I understand,
So yeah,
but
yeah.
for the public, I think that may serve, the public may not fully understand
Right,
what the
right,
whole
yeah,
future hope
yeah.
is by using that terminology.
now, if we move to the point that we have a dining coordinator who is actually preparing food and serving it, isn't it possible that we're going to require some additional workers in that area?
I think it could be. I mean, I think how we would staff it is probably further down the road, but only relevant for this conversation in terms of preparing for the space. So I can only speak to the models I have seen before, and I'll speak to the one that I've worked in before, which was there's one dining coordinator, and then just like we use senior tax work-off and volunteers for reception, that becomes a great place then to place other senior tax work-off folks. So there's one staff member and 3 or 4 volunteers that help with meal prep and serving and cleanup.
Okay.
And we have, senior tax work-off people helping serve the meals now too.
Okay, good. All right.
So they may need more than the existing 24 hours. They might need to go up to 30 hours or something, but that position already exists and it is already a full-time and benefited position. So I don't anticipate there being a huge budgetary change in that way. All right, in terms of, is everybody okay with the administrative spaces?
Yes.
In terms of the public spaces, those that are in red, and I just want to say for the sake of the public, like this is sort of us getting our arms wrapped around this, and then we will, of course, be open to public input, and then when the first conceptual drawings come out and we have more public input, there may be edits made to this, of course, but this is just trying to get to a starting point to provide a place to provide input. The lounge and library and the cafe area they kind of probably felt like one room when we went, more one room in North Andover, more spread out in Wilbraham.
Definitely two rooms, two locations in Wilbraham.
Yes, that one was much further apart. They were kind of one in the same in North Andover. They were just,
In Townsend too, I think. It's right at the entrance in Townsend, right? Right by the
Right.
fireplace.
yeah, that's the lounge and library. And Townsend used to have a formal cafe, and they took it out to put the hallway in to go back to the new
Yeah, yeah.
addition.
Now, is the cafe a for-profit thing? Is it like they sell the coffee and the pastries, or is that just the coffee and
Inexpensive.
pastry is available just as
They
a?
basically put it out, and some people put a donation in, I think, pretty much.
Most of the senior centers I've been to have, like, we get a shop and save donation every Monday for, day-old items. Right now, it's only, 6 or 8 items. We'd need to work something else out with that, but most of the senior centers receive a donation of baked goods, muffins, croissants, whatever they receive is what there is to put out for the day. And then the senior center funds the coffee and the coffee accessories, the creamers and milks, and then people just, like Ken said, put in a donation towards
I
it.
think cafe that the kitchen is producing muffins
No.
and things.
It's-
that-
No,
It's
it's just a
more-
little separate seating, it's
So
tiny.
it's not really,
Yeah.
it's not really a cafe, it's just a social area.
Yeah,
it's an
it's more of a
open area.
drop-in social area. So maybe you have attended a formal program, and you're just wanting to visit with somebody afterwards. You guys walk out together and you're like, do you want to get a cup of coffee? We can sit down and talk about that. Or maybe you're a van rider and you came half an hour early and you've got some time to kill before the program you're going to. You might have a cup of coffee and a donut or something
Why
like
don't we
that.
see maybe 2 tables that sit 4 people to a table, something like that, maybe
Yeah,
8, maybe seating for 8.
Yeah, well, I mean,
10.
this
and
this
what-
says here 20 occupancy of 25.
No, you're
That
talking about
was
the library, you're talking about the cafe.
That's about
well, the
6.
cafe
Wow.
says, yeah. So I mean,
didn't see it being that big, but.
Some of them weren't that big, but in Wilbraham, what she said was they took a donation and then they got donated goods, but they used the donation to buy coffee and creamer and stuff like that, so that it was relatively self-sufficient.
I think the thing that was probably one of the more significant, I'm not gonna say most important, more significant things in the cafe was the design of the serving area. How it was powered electrically, if it had a refrigerator, the little pieces that fit together on the counter, so that it all was efficient.
It was self-serving.
Yeah, but
You
you had
get
to
your
make
own
some kind
coffee
of
and
sense,
stuff.
you had storage for cups and this blah, 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 blah. So there was a little bit to it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think an occupancy of 25 might be a little high.
Yeah, it sounds
If I had to guess. And I have just the starting spreadsheet for Wilbraham was 16, and North Andover, they had lounge, library, cafe combined at 20, because like I said, they were a much tighter space. So,
The only thing I would say about that, before we cut back on things, is the biggest complaint that I had from the references
Yeah,
was that their areas weren't big enough.
yeah.
yeah.
So even if we figure, well, right now, maybe 25 wouldn't look good, but once we start operating, we may quickly jump to that,
Sure. Sure. Yep.
So I'd hate to cut it back.
Right. Yeah. I think 14 for the lounge and the library is probably just about right.
Now, that was the divided one, right? So one
Yep.
side was like with the fireplace and just a seating area, maybe a sofa and some chairs. And then the other side was library stuff and, again, some seating.
Right.
So if you're saying 14, you're really saying 7 and 7 or something.
Right, and that I can follow up and ask him about that, to see how he had that delineated, because maybe he had the louder side of the fireplace rolled into that 25. I'm not sure.
You're talking about the cafe? Yeah.
The cafe, because, yeah, because you're right, otherwise it's like 7 and 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how he does this. So he carries 35 square feet a person for the library space and 20 square feet a person for the cafe space. And all in all, it comes up to the same numbers.
Right.
I'm not so sure we need to concentrate on how he does the the mathematics, but how big is the space? You know?
Right,
Well, I
yeah.
would say in the library, part of the square footage is bookshelf and
Right, yeah,
things like that. He's adding that in because
yep.
you need the
Yeah.
bookshelves for all the books.
Yeah, and he had a lot of casework in there too.
Yeah.
A lot of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very cozy and warm
And-
feeling in there.
In North Andover or Wilbraham?
Wilbraham.
Wilbraham.
I
There
like
was
the
a
one in
lot of
North
room.
Andover as well. I know
Yeah.
that the placement of the fireplace was a significant concern, but, I mean, for me, the issue with the lounge, library, cafe, I think we will have a good size for it, let me say that. It's where it is, or where those three things are in relation to each other is,
Right.
which I think gonna be the really,
Sure.
What I've seen of his work, they're always right when you come in. They're almost adjacent to the
Reception or close to
reception
it.
area. And then there's always a component which is informational, you know, brochures and,
yeah, yeah.
and
Although,
all kinds of things about activities and,
Right.
although in North Andover, I think it was a little bit further back towards the back of the building, which made the library part of, you know, it was quieter,
Right.
tucked back on the far
Right.
wall there.
Yeah.
And all of this to be worked out.
All right. The multi-purpose room, that would be the big, large room. Typically, you're able to divide it. In the two examples we saw, it was a vaulted ceiling on at least half, if not both sides, with windows that open from the second floor that looked down into it. That would be the room where large events would happen. That would be the room where lunch would be served in. Group fitness would happen in that room potentially on the larger scale.
they also had movies because they had a drop-down screen.
Right, right.
It was basically connected to the
In connection
kitchen
to
on
the
the other
kitchen.
end.
Yep.
So
With flexibility.
Yeah, the one in Groton, which wasn't done by these folks, but to me, it had a nice layout. The fitness room, that is the largest conference room, they had separate fitness rooms with one with machines and one without machines. So what I would suggest is that we consider that the single largest multi-purpose room, perhaps, I don't know if we want it for fitness or not, or at any point would you have, I don't know, 80 people in a fitness class at a time or not, or?
Right. There is a fitness room further down here with an occupancy of 12 people. That could be your day in, day out one. But for example, if we got into line dancing, you'd need it in that bigger room because line dancers need like a 6 to 8 foot square a piece. So it's a much larger calculation per person than doing chair exercise or even Zumba or something like that.
And I was told by the person in Groton that the biggest problem they had was they had one fitness area that was stationary equipment, and that next to it was a fitness room, and with the thought that, oh, well, we could put them together. But they found they couldn't put them together because they had the equipment, and you couldn't really, you know, do a lot of the other
they've got
stuff.
equipment in there.
So
dedicated.
they were using other larger rooms, like the multi-purpose.
Right. And I agree with that because you really don't want to have to be taking tables up and down every day after exercise is over, but before you can serve lunch. If you don't have to do that, that's ideal. If you need to, you need to. But if you kind of have to have someone dedicated to do that because that does take some time.
Yeah, on here, you know, last time, Catlin explained that the fitness, number 11, was where equipment is.
Okay, thank you for, I didn't realize that. Okay, so that's the equipment focused.
Right.
Okay.
So, to Carolyn's point, I suspect that, and just from general conversation and for some of the folks around town, and also talking to some of the folks in other centers, senior centers, 12, I mean, I can see where that number, because 12, if you have machines in it, would seem like, you know, the upper range of what you'd look like. But I suspect that for fitness classes, we may well get quite a bit more than 12 at a time.
Right, and thank you, that's an important clarification with that one being the equipment room, because yes, so you would want to be able to have between 12 and 20, let's say,
Yeah.
people for
We used to have
exercise
25
classes.
people in the class that we were using the other room.
The attendant room, okay.
That's where we
Yeah.
had somebody
That must have been a
meeting.
tight squeeze.
It was terrible.
You
Yeah.
have 25 in this.
We had 25 people in the room adjacent to, this is in Ayer. And we had a leader who was leading the class. And she took pictures of that as a justification of why they needed more space.
Yeah, yeah.
So does that mean we need another room
Well,
that's for fitness, that's not necessarily?
so there's a couple of ways to think about this. I think from a programmatic perspective, if you've got a multi-purpose room that seats 150, you're not going to have lunch set up for 150. So if that room is dividable, you can run exercise on a regular basis in one half of it, and your lunch room in the other half, divider up or down, it doesn't matter. But you wouldn't want to have a room that seats 30 for lunch and then also have to set that one up and break it down each day for exercise. So,
Could be the exercise.
yeah, there we go.
Everybody
to work.
Back up, here's your boss.
Did any of the senior centers we looked at divide the room more than once? They all had just one divider, not two dividers.
And I think it's because you go long ways and that's a really long divider, but also because,
No, I was thinking if you cut it
oh, you mean into like
and
thirds.
then you cut it again, like that.
Half and then 2 quarters.
One half could be two halves,
Right.
2 quarters, and one could be a
Yeah.
half. Then you could potentially have half that space for the workout. It's different. When we're talking about fitness here, we're talking about the room that's got the equipment in it.
Right, so number
The rest
11 is
either a workout room
yeah.
or an exercise room or something like that.
So
Or a
there's,
step-
so number 10, the classroom with the divider could also be
Same
the
thing.
group fitness room.
Oh, okay,
It
alright.
could, you know what I'm saying, because there's an arts and crafts classroom, there's a classroom with a divider. And as I'm sort of sorting this out in my head, the classroom with the divider could very well be the exercise room
That is the-
as well.
It is and I think there are some
The
places
group
that we
fitness
saw,
room.
the largest room doesn't need to be the only subdividable room. I mean, there
Correct.
may be other
Yeah.
rooms
Right.
that are also subdividable to go from, I don't know, 40 to 20.
Right.
Or,
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I don't know how you would match up two dividers going at a perpendicular,
It was
but
just another
those
idea.
walls are expensive from my understanding, especially,
Yeah.
there would be that piece.
I like the idea you just said of turning the arts and crafts
Of what?
classroom with a divider into the
Yeah.
other half, because that is also 1,200, which means half of it would be 600. 20 by 30, is that enough space for a
That's,
class?
20 by 30 is enough space for
Exercise.
most classes,
Yeah,
and if you were gonna have, a bigger class than that, then you could,
What kind of equipment are you planning on having in the classroom? Are there gonna be
We don't-
desks and
That would be-
chairs, or is it just, when you say classroom, is it just an empty room? Or
So-
are there desks, chairs?
so all of
Tables.
all of the rooms will have flexible seating and tables in them that will all either match or be coordinating with one another so that they have a place that they're intended to be, but that they can flex and move from room to room, which is again why you have to have so much storage. But yeah,
Storage.
yeah. So, so all the idea is that all of these rooms, with the exception of the fitness equipment room, they're all very multi-purpose, very flexible for use, just keeping in mind that every time you move them around, it takes time and energy. Yeah.
With the exception too of if there's billiard tables.
Yes, that's a whole, we're not to that number yet.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a
I
second.
wanted to talk about the multipurpose room.
Yes.
Because I'm saying, again, I encountered this from several people when I did the references. Several of them felt, oh, well, I was told I was going to have a multipurpose room for like 150, and I needed at least 175, and I wish I had had 200. Now, I'm not sure by calculation if these are towns that were much bigger than us or what. But, I mean, do you think there would be a case that would, like you were doing a Christmas dinner or something? Do you think there'd be a case where you'd need more than 150?
I think 150 is a decent room. Having had experience with a room that seats 100 comfortably and you can jam 110 in if you're a little directive with where people with walkers and wheelchairs sit. I think it's enough. 150.
And that's for dining, I'm sorry, and that's for dining or that's for seating?
Occupancy of 100, if I would be guessing here, but I would guess that that is table seating. Because that's the intended use of that multi-purpose room. It's lunch tables. But that's a good question to ask.
Because, and I saw Groton 3 weeks ago or so, and they had a pretty large room, but they kind of understood the distinction between seating for dining versus seating for presentations or what have you.
Movies or something, yeah.
And so, I mean, it's just something to be aware
So
of.
how many, this is 25, so how,
This is 17 square feet
So
per
in-
person.
40 by 65.
okay, so that
That's what you're
room,
trying to figure out.
yeah, so the room in Townsend was 40 by 70, and we sat 100 for lunch. We only had a couple of concerts in there, but you could seat closer to 200 when it was just chairs in a row like this. So that is dining for 150, right? That's the
Well, that's what he
comparable
says,
room?
basically, yeah. So you said the other one was 40 by 70?
40 by 70,
So that's 2,800.
2,800, this is 25.
It's a little less than that.
50. So I'll follow up with
I
him to
just
be
think
sure.
that's a key
Yeah.
element, because
Yeah.
it's,
It
it's our it's where we're gonna have our focal events. And we don't wanna, I mean, it might be enough when we start, but as it becomes more popular, because you're not just serving air, you get people from all over.
Well, to give a little perspective to that, I was in a line dancing class in Littleton, and the instructor was looking for, additional places to have her class. But her experience said that, Littleton was sort of perfect because there's 495
basement?
and Route 2 there, and it's easy to get to. It's not off the beaten track. And so more people are attracted to, classes, for example, there. Any of our 3 sites they are within the town of Ayer, and it would take, quite a bit of effort from somebody out of town to get there, as opposed to almost anything in Littleton, being at 495 and 2. So, I would think that we probably shouldn't, should watch the budget and not overbuild, keeping that in mind, that it probably will be quite air-centric.
Yeah.
Thought you used the word tension very remarkably earlier. I think the tension is going to be evident.
Tension.
What for?
The tension between the size and the cost. It's going to be
Yeah.
tension all the
It
way.
is.
Yeah.
Right, but, and again, I mean, for me, I think that I am more interested in making sure the building is sufficient to meet the needs of the community. The cost will, that is, I don't think for the purposes of this exercise, we should be thinking about how much is it gonna cost and can the town afford it?
No, I agree with that. We
I
have
mean,
to
I
make-
think for the purposes of this exercise, it is, what do we need to make sure that the building will meet the needs of the community, not be too small, that is, we will not quickly outgrow it,
Right.
and that it will allow for us to expand the level and the quality of service available to the town seniors. when, and we'll see what the pushback is, if any, from the town regarding, well, we want you to have it, comma, but.
Yeah.
And then, that negotiation will have to
Yeah.
take place. But for my purposes, I think we have to kind of
Yeah.
be optimistic and hopeful about what the town is capable of doing for its residents.
I don't know if we
So whether or
asked,
not we can get grants or what's out there for
Yeah. We've
subsidies
already
to
been
help
pretty
build this.
successful with that.
yeah,
Yes, but again, I mean, this is a particular point for me. That is, it is not the case that we can't afford it, in my view. The question is, will we have the political will to afford it?
I'll take the stance that we're doing the right thing here. The steps we've taken so far are correct.
Yeah.
Hired the right people, we're analyzing it step by step. At the end of the day, we have plenty of analysis to go back on and
And we'll
clean-
get
clean
input.
breakdown.
You
And
know, we
we'll get
haven't
the
even
input
started
eventually.
getting input
I think
from
what-
our
What
community.
would have been helpful tonight, but it's way too early. I mean,
Right.
for him to give us this, I thought was a great start. When we take this and turn it into a floor plan, blueprint, whatever you want to call it, program, that's going to be better. One thing I just thought of, which I don't think we asked him for, was, I'm not sure if his concept plans are going to include the furnishings. I wrote a note to myself, so that the furnishings landing in the floor plan will give us an idea. This is how many
okay.
seats land here, this is how many tables land here. And when you look at your room, your multipurpose room, and you do set up all the tables, how does it all work out with the aisles? Going between the tables and the full length of the room. So we really need to look at not just the size of the room, but the layout inside the useful space.
Are they round, are they square, are they
The whole
rectangular?
thing, somebody, and I'm sure he has it. He probably has something like that, but I don't think we ever asked him to include that in the proposal at this point. I'm
I
not
can-
sure.
I can follow up with him and ask him
You
most
understand what I'm
of
saying?
those.
So it proves out that, if you say there's 110, let's show me 110, or whatever the number is.
Right, right.
We know that it's a comfortable fit.
But I think that, didn't he say that he kind of, that allowance per person for that particular room allows for the furniture?
Well, he did say that, but then I recall a conversation in Wilbraham, that's why I've got the note on
I see.
it, that we're not sure if his contract at the end of the day includes the furniture.
Oh, the
yes,
con-
so
the contract.
he-
So if he's not, they had a furniture consultant who was a friend of the Council of Aging,
Yes.
so they
but
moved that
was-
away, but they basically,
That's how they could afford, they had to cut some
bunch of
money
things.
in order to get it passed.
But
And so
that's
they
two
cut that.
separate things, though.
Right,
Will
but
the
it's-
concept drawings include, you could fit 4 round tables, this is
Right.
how 4, versus like,
That's kind of what I'm interested in.
these are the actual round tables. So I think in Wilbraham, they were saying that he acknowledged he wasn't good with colors and furnishings and turned that over to them to do. But I think that the overall budget project, the overall budget had the furnishings included in it. It's just that he wasn't the source of them.
Okay,
He
well,
had them
I think we'll
pick
be
them up, yeah.
clarifying that, as
But
we
the-
go forward.
But for the, yes, agreed. For the drawings, I think though,
I just like,
Yeah,
I'd feel better if I could see the fit.
right,
Is it-
sure.
Is it a 5-foot round, is it a 6-foot round, is it an 8-foot round? So
Right,
what is he
right.
proposing, and
Yep.
what's the aisle space gonna be
Yep.
between the tables when we push our
Especially
chair
that
back?
multi-purpose room where it's the biggest,
Right.
impact of changing things around. I mean, that was it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Coming back to the multi-purpose room, I would like to see that be all vaulted. In North Andover, it was all vaulted. In Wilbraham, it was half vaulted. Right? Am I remembering that correctly?
I think in North Andover, it was, because we talked about it briefly, I think part of it was not vaulted in North Andover.
Well, there,
They had
it
the
was,
upper walkway above it.
yeah, it was like a straight wall and a slanted wall. But in Wilbraham, half of it was like that, and then half of it was a flat one-story ceiling, right?
Oh, I see.
Well, it
Because
had
they
to do
had the
with the
second
size,
floor on top of it.
it had to do with the size of the second floor being a lot smaller than the size of the first floor.
Right.
Because the second floor, there's no second floor above the multipurpose room.
Right, but on half of the multi-purpose room in
Well, that's
Wilbraham,
just a
there
sloped
was.
ceiling. It was a sloped ceiling away. You were looking at I think we were looking at the roof line of the second floor went up, but it was cut.
Right, but when we went we were looking at the big room
Yeah.
where we started going outside looking at the bricks. There was a wall there. That was the divider. That wasn't the whole room. That was half the room.
Correct, to our left, when we
Right.
walked into the room.
Yes.
Yeah.
On the other side of the divider where
It
we
was-
walked out
it
and
was
walked
not
back in
vaulted.
again, it was not vaulted over there.
Correct.
So
Right.
one thing I have heard a couple of people say is that they would have loved to have been able to do a pickleball court indoors in the winter. And in order to do that, you had to have the vaulted ceiling throughout, because otherwise you just mess up the ceiling as people's balls hit into the ceiling.
And there was also an issue with the screen for movies.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
there was a lower wall, and that's where he put the screen, and it was too low for people to see.
Yeah, that
So
one's.
they had to move it.
Yeah, that one's a no-brainer. The screen has to go on the vaulted wall, because
Right.
if not, it's not up high enough for everyone to be able to see. Yeah.
You have
Yep.
to be careful with vaulting everything because he puts all of his mechanicals
It's
in the
fascinating.
attic.
It's
Right,
fascinating
yeah.
with this. It's
Yeah.
really fascinating.
So I mean, I think there'll be lots of things that you can
think
say.
it's
I would like
definitely
this. I would
worth
like
bringing
that,
up
and then
about that.
see what he envisions, and then there'll be lots of things that will be like.
So your thought is two possible indoor pickleball courts?
Well, I'd have to see what I'd have to compare, I don't know off the top of my head what the square footage of the pickleball court is, but I'm gonna guess there's only gonna be one that would fit in that space. By the time you have to have the 5-foot buffers on either side.
But in terms of the programmatic needs, what do you think one indoor pickleball court will
Yeah, because I
suffice?
mean, we're not doing a rec center, so I think I think one would be fine. 2 would be ideal, but I don't think you can justify expanding the scope of the entire room in order to get that, right? So, but I would love if there's a choice between layout A that allows that whole room to have the vaulting, and layout B that only half of it does, I would pick the one that has the full vaulting, because that would be the added benefit for me.
Okay.
Where's
Eric.
the squash court? No handball? Racquetball?
Game room with billiard tables.
Item 6.
Item
Now,
6.
there was one of the places we saw that didn't do billiards table. They were doing ping pong. And there was the one place that had billiards table that they put in 2, and they were too big
That was
for
Wilbraham.
people to use.
Yeah, Wilbraham. They struggled with the,
They had a real big,
Layout.
they bought a very large billiard tables, but I just wonder how much people use them.
Well,
I think it's a part of trying to attract more males to the,
in Groton, they had the billiard table in the lobby,
I see,
Yeah.
yeah.
which they said got a lot of, it gets a lot of action. You walk in the door and look to the right, the billiard
Yeah, it's
table
right
is
there.
there, and the women are playing it all the time, she said.
really.
And I've also heard that, in terms of the man cave thing, the problem for me for billiard tables is that they're kind of a single-use thing. You ain't moving a slate
Yeah,
billiard
exactly.
table around. So, I think that in terms of discussing this,
And they're expensive, aren't
if we kind of think about what would a game, because I've also seen a gentleman actually I met today, I was talking with today, wants darts. And just kind of a game room, a card room, darts, the one where they throw the beanbag,
Cornhole.
Everybody loves that.
so there are. So all I would say is that billiards kind of restricts the ability to use the room in a number of different ways. There may be other alternatives, but I know that billiards is a pretty popular activity for a lot of people.
You can always get
And-
a ping pong table top that sits on top of the billiard table and just goes in a closet when it's not in use, if you
One
had
of
to.
there were 2 people who mentioned that card-playing people do not want to be in the same room with billiard-playing
Right.
people.
It was a small
They
petition.
don't like the noise. And
Really?
Concentrate.
one of
Let's
them
do a
put-
deep dive on that one.
Yeah, you
No, but
concentrate.
she put it like a bar. It was
Yeah.
about this high,
Yeah.
that you could sit at, and people sat at it and sometimes worked on their computers. But it blocked a little bit of
Right.
here versus, so they had their individual areas.
Can you remind me what it looked like in North Andover? I remember what it looked like in Wilbraham. What did that area look like in North Andover?
There were
Did
two
they-
large billiard tables that she regretted having there because they couldn't move them.
Were they in the
That
far
wasn't-
back part of the upstairs?
They were upstairs, it was glass on all the walls.
That's not long, that, I mean.
It was a
which one?
big room. I mean, there was more than enough space for the billiard tables.
You're thinking of.
But she was, I mean, from her, and again, you know, different population, but from her perspective, I think she felt like they were immovable objects that were taking up quite a bit of space. Like, she wasn't getting as much bang for her buck for that room just because
Because
the
of the
billiard
border
tables were-
space you needed around them.
Right.
They couldn't work out a way, and the size of them, they couldn't work out a way for people, two teams to play. So, and it was a very large room.
I mean, I think for us in this town, a good option is to have a program that you use Billiards Cafe.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you say, you know, so every day at 1 o'clock, you know, there's a billiards tournament or, you know, whatever.
Right.
To set it up as part of the program in a different space.
I would be in favor of that because that's using our community resources and not repeating something.
Yeah.
Until they go
Yeah.
out of business.
Or
Well,
setting
if they
up
go out of
something.
business,
Help
maybe
them
we
not,
buy their
though.
pool tables. Switch it around. But like, for example, we're starting a bowling league in June, and it's far more successful than I thought it was going to be, going over to Harvard Lanes when they reopen in June. So, yeah, doesn't mean the senior center can't have a senior billiards team or time that we rent out over there, but it doesn't necessarily need to be in our building. I would be more in favor of creating much more of a game room vibe by buying the actual 5-sided poker tables that flip over. And what's that? Not pool table?
Bumper pool.
What's it called?
Bumper pool.
Bumper pool, right? Something like that. And darts. Like a more flexible option.
Maybe a Wii thing where you can
Yeah,
play all
yeah.
kinds of stuff.
I would say that I almost can't think of a person that would say, geez, I'm not using the senior center because there's no billiards table down there. So
Yeah.
to me, it's just wicked low
I
priority.
just feel it puts us in competition too.
Really low priority.
But is this
If you're
billiards
gonna have it at
table?
all, I'd put one in, not two.
Well, but that's interesting because if you put one in, you're putting it in for casual use. That's a whole different thing, like the
Yeah,
cafe,
teams and all that
versus if you want to have it as a structured event. And that's the question. What would be the purpose? If you had two of them, you'd be doing it as a structured event.
I'd rather see it dedicate the space to more exercise and activities than people playing billiards or
Well,
pool.
I think this is why we need input from the public.
Yeah, this is an
You know, if there's a lot of
excellent
people are going,
place for
I'm
that.
counting on them to have the billiards
I
table.
don't think so.
But is the billiard center accessible?
Yeah.
Down here, they have an
From the
elevator.
back.
They have an
Yeah,
elevator.
yeah.
I know I've had to use this area.
Yeah, there's a long,
Yeah.
long ramp in the back, right?
Yeah.
And then the elevator, yeah.
Walk it all the time.
Yep. So, all right, so
Billiards is a question
so
mark.
game room with billiard tables as a question mark, and
Right.
I do think there's going to be a lot of places that some places where we really critically need the public's input, some places where we think we know and then we go to them to confirm that. But I think the billiard table piece and the use of that room for sure is much
Yeah.
more open in my perspective. I'm not sure. So the card and conference room, which I think if we looked at either one of those examples, they kind of flow into the same space. I like the divider. You know, and I was looking at Wilbraham, I was going, oh, I love that bar they put up with 3 or 4 essentially bar stools with
Yeah.
area with outlets. So if you had a laptop or you wanted to just charge your phone or whatever, you could do that. It'd be really cool if the future friends of the Ayer seniors could do like a stained glass kind of thing with maybe an Ayer building or like something iconically Ayer on it that would add to the game room vibe, but to sort of further delineate that space, because then over on the card and conference room side, you would want smaller tables designed for easy access of the cards. You don't want big tables where you have to really reach in there. So that's set up to have, 4 or 6 tables, but of a smaller scale.
What about cribbage?
Yeah, we've got between 8 and 12 cribbage players now. Hopefully that will grow even more. So, that would be the space they'd be at. I tried to get board games going and nobody seems to want to do it, but I'll continue to try. But that would be a great place to do board games in that space too.
Okay.
Any thoughts about that?
No?
That would seat 15. I can't imagine we would have more than 15 players. And if you had more than 15 players where you're all talking to each other, the noise level's going to get too high anyway. So you would break it up into 2. If you needed 2 sessions of cribbage or whatever, you could always do that.
Should we drop it down to 14 or raise it to 16? Because don't you usually have everything in even numbers when you're playing games?
He's trying to get to the square footage.
And of course, my model for this is, I play duplicate bridge in Chelmsford, and we have sometimes max of 10 tables. So that's, 40
of 4.
people. But that's probably unique. I don't know of any other senior centers that
You'd probably have to put
Accommodate
that in
them.
the half of the multi-purpose room. then.
Right.
you could
And that's-
probably, as long as you had card table size tables,
Right.
card tables.
Yep.
This is a pretty small room he's talking about.
And I
Yeah.
think that really
More or
is
less a conference room, not
Right.
a card room. Could be used, a few people will play cards, but not many.
250 square
It's
feet.
strange not to have a dedicated conference room. Most of them do.
Just figured
I've
it
seen.
should be a conference room.
Well, that's a conference room for, not the administration's conference room, but rather, or is it?
Or for
Yes, it's a
meetings. or-
Conference room, there's only one.
So, I was thinking that administratively, there would be some room where you could sit 10 or 12, although there would be no reason why that couldn't be the same room, I guess. No,
Yeah.
that's right.
Pretty
So
much
the
the same.
conference room would have to sit,
So let's say we had a council on aging board meeting. So that would be held in one half of room number 10 or one half of room number 9.
Okay.
and not in the conference room, as you would see.
Well,
it.
Because you need people to be able to sit in a room as well with you.
In-
right. So I'm not really sure why it's called a Carter conference room.
Yeah, no,
I think it's based on the ones I've seen, the models I've seen of his work. It's 2 pieces of the same room, but I'm making notes of things to ask him about further.
In Sudbury, there was long conference room with those very huge video, things that moved around.
Right.
And they had a current events program several days a week where people came in and talked about news and watched things and all.
Yeah, I mean,
And
that's
it's
how I envisioned the
and it seemed to be
conference
kind of
room for those purposes.
pretty
yeah.
popular.
Yeah, yeah.
That people could come in and talk
Okay.
about that. So I just don't like the idea of that it's either or, because cards are very popular. We have a program at Autumn Ridge every Wednesday, and it's packed. I don't know exactly how many people, but they play cards.
Yeah.
And so I do think we need,
Yeah, we need
Room for
clarification
that.
on what he's talking about
Yep.
there.
'Cause
I think it's just a conference room.
Yeah, I
myself.
mean, I'm thinking of the card room as
That's-
being part of the game room.
That's what I was thinking too.
And the
yeah,
conference
but
room being.
again,
Yeah.
not if you have billiards, because the
No, no.
cards people aren't gonna be wanting to be around.
Yeah.
Okay.
right.
Arts and crafts classroom. That's an occupancy of 20.
And that would be something with tables
Right.
that they showed. And a sink, definitely. He doesn't mention the sinks. Do we have a way of knowing which rooms have sinks?
I don't think that's determined yet.
Yeah, because.
My preference would be as
Lot.
many of them as possible.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
definitely arts.
Because again, as programs ebb and flow, and over time you might have one person or two people that are kind of regular users that are champions of this program, and that program flourishes for 4, 5, 6 years, and then they move to a different stage of their life or have different interests, then it might get smaller. Like programs get bigger and smaller over time.
Right.
And so the ability to move them to say, well, you guys used to meet in this room, but now you're going to meet in this room
I don't
is
want to.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it would also kind of expand, it may contract over time, but some programs, and depending on the population specifics, it could expand. So you
Sure.
start off in the conference room, but now you're going to end up in
Multi-purpose
half
room.
of the multi-purpose room.
Right. Yep. Yep. So the more sinks, the better.
So now, classroom divider, 1,200 feet.
So that's
good.
a nice big
It's a
room.
nice room that you can use for things.
And that's the one we had said we thought group fitness would be in. And then the fitness equipment room. I know people have had strong opinions one way or the other about whether there is a fitness equipment room. I think if it's programmed well, then it can be popular. I've certainly been into senior centers where they haven't been used at all, and I've been in senior centers where they're being used kind of all the time. So hard to predict
Groton
that.
charges like $60. I don't know if it's a month or whatever, but it's a pretty significant fee for anybody to use that room. So it's
So the
almost
one with the equipment in it, yeah.
the one with the equipment room, and it has to be booked in advance. But that's a lot of money,
Yeah.
I think. So, and that equipment is very expensive.
Yes.
So,
Okay, so what kind of equipment are we talking? Are we talking treadmills, or are we talking a universal machine? Or
treadmill,
what are you thinking of
bikes.
putting in there?
I've seen it, I think, I forget, maybe Andover, North Andover had, it varies widely.
yeah,
I
they
mean,
have
some
weights.
exercycles, one had a universal machine, some just have treadmills and exercise bikes and some hand weights.
CDs, yeah.
So it's going to, as a general proposition, I have heard from many people in Ayer that the fitness classes and having exercise space is very, very important.
Yeah.
It's also, I think, true that all three of our interviewed architects stress the importance of kind of physical fitness as being critical to allowing older people to thrive as they get older.
Yeah, I think it is. Originally it was the big reason that people went. It still is.
Yeah. So, how big the room and what equipment? I think this would be something again, for the public to kind of weigh in on.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to visualize that kind of size for
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so Katie, you said the use varied greatly. Do you know, how would you work a program so that it would promote the use of fitness equipment?
So I would suggest having either a senior tax work-off or another volunteer to sort of monitor the room and to have an orientation required before you go in. And then as far as programming, doing things like walking contests, like go walk, log your time, on this board. You can make little friendly competitions, who's been here, who hasn't been. You can set it up like, what is the gym? Is that Orange Theory that does, everybody's gonna walk for 4 minutes and then you're gonna stop and we're gonna do.
Oh, it's intermittent, what is it?
Right,
Yeah.
have, like everyone can rotate between the stations and move. You can program that in a way that makes it almost where you could have drop-in hours and then structured programming hours. And then when people see, they come for a structured program because they're not really sure how the elliptical works, right? Or whatever it is. But they come for a structured program, or, you know, they've never been one to lift weights before, but they come to the structured program, and then all of a sudden it's not scary anymore. It's something that it was a supported experience, and then maybe they start using it in the open gym hours afterwards because they feel comfortable now. I also can see an opportunity to market that to folks who are recently retired, who are oftentimes trying to figure out how to fill their time and how to readjust their budget. Maybe they, as professional, full-time workers, have had a gym membership, but now on their new budget, they're trying to figure out how to not have a gym membership, and so you can kind of court those folks in. I don't see it as a full replication of the gym down here by the railroad tracks or Anytime Fitness over there, but having the main core things that someone would want in order to maintain functional fitness as they age.
So he's saying it's 420 feet, so that's like 20 by 20, 20 by 22 or something. It's not-
That's not large.
That's all you
know,
need.
that's a,
Yeah, I don't think we need a lot more than that.
That's right. So if that's what we think it takes, then
No, we have to,
figure out how
I
to
think
use
he's
it.
jumping the gun there. Before you can decide the size of the fitness room, you need to know the size of the equipment that you're putting in there.
From his experience, he's coming up with
If you
this.
decide to put a universal in there, or a universal and a couple of stair treads, you need to be able to get all the way around the
Right.
universal.
I think that's where the 35 square feet per person comes in. So that's a 7x5 block, which I think
Not
is
very much.
7
Might
by
be
5
for
is
a
plenty
treadmill
for
and
a
stuff like
treadmill
that.
or an elliptical
Yeah.
or a bike.
Well, like I said, but it
Yeah.
depends, like, if you were to put free weights in, or free weights take up a little more space, you need racks, you need a universal,
I wouldn't.
or
I wouldn't do any. By universal, do you mean like Olympic weights?
well, no, a universal is a pulley, almost like
Oh,
a
like a
pulley
pulley
system. It's a
system.
whole.
Okay, yeah, like a pulley system?
It's like a 14 station unit where at one point you're doing lats, another point you're doing sit-ups, another one you're doing.
I think that would be a really great thing to take to the public and ask them. There's a lot more ways to go wrong or hurt yourself with incorrect form on something like that. And so I think I would want to ask what people are really looking for, because that might require a little more monitoring.
Well, like I said, as a younger, older senior,
Right.
I would
Yeah.
be looking for more of that type of equipment
Right.
as opposed to
Okay.
treadmills and.
That's a good point.
Okay.
All right, I will ask him about that. I'll ask him what he thinks the
what
400, what will fit in the 420 square feet, and then and he'll have a mock-up of what
does he
goes in there.
recommend? What does
Yeah.
he recommend to put into
Right.
the room?
Yep. Anything else for the fitness equipment room?
Yeah, the other thing to remember on the fitness equipment was there's gotta be storage in there too. I'm not sure if he counts that separately or not, but there was definitely a storage area in the one we saw in Wilbraham.
Right. It had all those cubbies.
Yeah, there was a bunch
Yeah.
of cubbies and some other stuff there going on.
I don't think the one in Groton had much. I mean, just because everything was stationary. I mean, the treadmills and the bikes,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah,
just
it's
kind of,
not very big.
it was pretty, I was surprised at how small it was actually.
Yeah.
But they said it was exceptionally well used, except between like 6 and 9 a.m.
Right.
It was,
Yeah.
that was,
You know, and
Is there a
was
locker
it
room
6 a.m.?
in any of these?
Bathroom.
what's that?
To lock-
So there is the companion restroom that does have a shower, but it's in,
Yeah.
which is a whole different discussion.
Yeah.
But its intended use was not for showering after going to the gym.
No, we just
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
stick in a locker room, so you come in, you change into your workout
Yeah, no,
clothes.
they're
and
not.
Have
Right.
a locker, you can throw your street clothes in, you work out, then you change back into your street
Yeah,
clothes.
I don't think any of the places
No.
were,
In-
had that kind
Might
of.
have been a
In
closet.
Wilbraham, there were cubbies,
Cubbies
so
in the
that you
closet.
could have put those things in while you're working, but you would have just had to go into the regular bathroom stall to switch your clothes. For the wellness room nurse's office, that's 150 square feet.
Yeah, they had some nights, they were small rooms,
Yeah.
but there was room for, some tables, or there were like 2 tables. So if somebody, but they also were doing some massage and things like that. And then there was the wall that had a big sink in it and storage and I guess a desk area. Those were very nice. Do we have to figure a nurse for staff?
No, the town nurse visits us once a month and does a well adult clinic. She takes blood pressure. She can do blood sugar, though she doesn't most times. She can do basic wound care. But
Once a
mostly
month?
people come, yep, mostly people
Wouldn't we
come.
want to have more of a nurse presence to do wellness at least once a week?
I suppose we could. I could see if the town nurse, you wouldn't want to put a nurse on staff. I mean,
No. Oh,
but
okay.
but if there was public interest in that, but that room is really versatile. So the nurses can sometimes come back to do a health education program, but I have a bunch of different sources for health education programming. That would be a good thing to take to the public as well. Like, do they see, would
Wasn't
they
there-
like more access to health services?
Right.
Or do they feel like those needs are met elsewhere?
So the nurse is the public health nurse.
Yes.
It's Neshoba Valley Public, it's not an employee of the town, it's employee of Neshoba Valley Public Health. or
It's
whatever.
the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health.
Boards of Health,
Yes,
okay.
yeah. Maureen?
I thought that room was also intended to be, in the event of an emergency. Someone would go in there and,
Yeah.
there'd be some first aid if needed and
Yeah.
things along those lines.
Yeah, they might have a defibrillator.
Yeah.
or whatever.
So that room is very versatile. It would be one of the few rooms that wouldn't have glass
Right.
doors
Well, they
or
had
glass
frosted-
walls
they had
at
frosted.
all. Any of that. It is great for massage. Massage is so popular at most senior centers. You can typically find a massage therapist who senior center hours are their off-peak times and are often willing to give below market rate
Yeah. That's in
massages.
Littleton.
That's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Wow.
Podiatry, sometimes a hairdresser. If you do a hairdresser, you have to put in a hairdresser sink,
Yeah.
which is a little bit harder. Yeah, manicure services, all of those kinds of services can happen in there. And then it is, again, an overflow space for a private
Right.
meeting if it
Yeah, I
if
think
need
that's
be.
important.
So moving into the kitchen, I love that there is a separate pantry and receiving room that also could be the place that is shared with an eventual dining coordinator's desk. I don't know enough about kitchen design, but one thing Ken and I noticed at the tours that we went to is that the commercial kitchens were quite large in there. I've seen some really big kitchens there, and then I've also seen, the Shirley Senior Center has a commercial kitchen, and it's quite possibly the tiniest commercial kitchen I've ever seen. So something in between there. But if I was gonna pick a place to, negotiate on square footage a little bit, I feel like maybe his standard kitchen is a little larger than we need. We could figure out ways to economize on size there. There might be specifications I don't know or I'm not aware of. I definitely want a commercial kitchen, but a commercial kitchen that's going to serve the amount of food that our multi-purpose rooms.
How many people are you planning on feeding out of it? That's what generates the size of your kitchen, because it determines how big your walk-in is, how big your refrigerator is,
Yeah.
how many stoves, ovens, grills, or what kind of food are you planning on
Right.
feeding out of it?
Right.
Dave has got a lot of experience.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm a Johnson & Wales graduate.
Wow.
Ah, okay.
chef.
Yeah. So I mean, so your next job opportunity.
Looking for a job?
I have several. I gotta go down and apply so I can be their handyman first.
That's right. So, some of the ones we looked at, there was enough space for like 10 people to be working in there.
They were built for restaurants. I mean, a first-class restaurant would love some of those kitchens.
Yeah.
that we
But like, for example, like to be very specific for a second, there was space in, I think it was in Wilbraham's kitchen. You know how like, and you have the commercial dishwasher where you bring the thing down, right?
It's a single
I have
tank.
happy
Yeah, the
memories
conveyor.
of high school, right?
It's not a-
So there was enough runway on either side for 3 racks, then what was actually being washed, and 3 racks on the other side. I don't actually think that the senior center needs that amount of square footage on a dishwashing line.
You don't need that on the inside, but you need it on the outside because you have to wait, after it comes out, you have to wait for it to cool and dry before you can pick it up and put it away.
As a person who's lived without nerve endings in my fingertips for a long time, after a nursing home experience that did not have that, maybe I have to agree with you.
Well, that's more of a sanitation aspect than anything else,
right.
because you don't want to stack the stuff while it's wet. You
Right.
gotta let it dry
Right.
before you can put it away, because you run into Board of Health issues if you don't.
Right.
One of the
So-
things that, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, there's definitely going to be a kitchen consultant involved here
Right.
as a subcontractor. And I have worked with some of them and built some kitchens, but those folks can help us as well.
A lot of it's gonna depend on
Gonna-
how high tech are we gonna get with
Right.
the equipment, because there's some equipment out there now that it's basically, you put a whole rack, a sheet pan rack in there, and you can cook 1,000 hamburgers in 15 minutes
Right.
if you wanted
But-
to. It depends on what
Yeah.
level of what you're going for. You're gonna have to decide what type of menu you're gonna be putting before you can decide how big your kitchen's gonna be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
You're
that's
gonna have,
important.
you're gonna
Yeah.
have tilting, are you gonna have a tilting skillet, are you gonna have a steam kettle?
So I think that for this, again, it will be something that I would be looking for information from the public. And it's been my experience in just talking to the other senior centers that mealtime, it tends to be well subscribed, and that it's the more popular time for the people to be there. But how active and engaged does the public feel like they want in terms of stopping in for lunch, going to the larger formal meals or not? Some, I think it was Andover, not North Andover, but Andover had breakfast sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
That they would be serving.
Yeah.
So getting some feedback from the public about if, how active and engaged do we want? Because then, to your point, then we'll know how many people are we cooking for. Are we cooking for 40 people 3 times a week for lunch? Or are we cooking for,
150, 6 times a week.
Yeah.
Well, so if I can just make a projection, I would project that we're cooking for 40 people 5 days a week, and we're cooking for 75 or so once a month, and then 4 or 5 times a year, we're gonna fill our room to the 150.
With a
Now,
party
Meals,
or
do Meals on Wheels come out of the same kitchen, or is Meals on Wheels a different program altogether?
So Meals on Wheels right now is provided by Mock, who used to cook it in Fitchburg. Now they're cooking it in Waltham. That COVID changed that process entirely, and I think that's an interesting question. Some senior centers that have a commercial kitchen, they just have the little machine and then the thing that seals the top, and whatever you're eating in the senior center is what goes out for Meals on Wheels. Yeah.
Do we ever?
But it's not a large number of people. Either way, I wouldn't make a decision on the kitchen around that either way, probably.
So are you thinking, as soon as you get in there, that we're actually gonna be cooking it? Or that you're gonna be doing what you're doing now, where you're getting it from other locations?
I would consider that to be completely personnel dependent.
Right.
If I was able to tee up someone to do that in the process of opening, I would absolutely open with it that way. But opening the new building will be a gradual thing,
Yeah.
right? But yes, I would like to see that go as quickly as possible.
Okay. I know when I did the references, the kitchen was something that was a big thing with everybody. And I don't think there were any of them that were actually cooking there, and one that might have been planning to start soon. And they all said it's very expensive proposition. They do believe it should be a professional one, but they felt they might have overbought, you know, that the equipment they had bought was not, wasn't necessary, that there could have been other ways of, you know, making it less. And so there seemed some confusion there.
The other thing that's interesting, it's, sorry, but, you know, Catlin emphasized the quality of the building and the insulation factor and all the things he works at. The most inefficient part of that building is gonna be the kitchen. That they just burn electricity like crazy running all those coolers. You better know what you're buying
Right.
and have it controlled, because you'll be running coolers all night long.
Energy efficient.
Energy inefficient, you know, so.
Yeah.
It's costly equipment and it's expensive to run.
Sure.
I think that is an area where we have to concentrate
Gotta
and
really think
hopefully.
about it.
One thing that I will say is helpful is that some senior centers don't have a dining infrastructure in place, like a personnel structure in place or a budget in place. Because if they have always served just the mock meals, then there's no line item in their budget for a dining program, because we never really used that. I mean, since I've come on, we have not used mock as anything other than the Meals on Wheels. Our main dining program, Tuesday through Thursday and most Fridays, is catered lunch. There's already a budget established in our existing department budget. And there's also a dining coordinator, a benefited, you know, position in our budget. So making that transition for us into a new building, into a fully functioning, working commercial kitchen will be much smaller than for a town that didn't have anybody on any kitchen staff in their budget. They've got to go to town meeting and ask to hire a new person. Not that you can't do that, you absolutely can, but it's one more hurdle. They have to wait till town meeting to get the funding, and then they have to wait till the next fiscal year for it to be accessible. Same thing for a meals budget for the money to buy all that food with. Right now, we're spending all that money buying catering. You know, in the new building, in the new kitchen, that money would become like raw food materials, which will go a whole lot further.
Yeah.
You know, in that way. So
Yeah.
that I think is hopefully working in our favor.
Yeah, but to Ellen's point, the senior centers that I visited also did not cook their own lunches or their own meals. And, I also am concerned about, putting too much equipment and too expensive for kitchen.
And I think that's something that working with a kitchen consultant will be huge to try and figure out, how to accomplish it in the smallest and most cost-effective way. Because I agree. I don't think we need to cook 1,000 burgers in 15 minutes. That's
We're gonna run into code issues there, people are gonna be telling us what we need to do there as a
Right.
minimum.
There are minimums, but how you accomplish them, for
Commercial
sure.
kitchen.
There's a
So
lot of
There's gonna be
ways.
some minimum.
If you ask the right questions, see, the problem is people don't know what the equipment is capable of. So they come in and they just
The
tell you this is
consultant
what you
does. The
need. So that's
consultant.
where I'll be on your side. I'll be like, well, wait a minute, why can't we put
Right.
this as opposed to that? Because now I can
That's
do this,
good.
this, and this in there.
Yeah.
And every piece of equipment you're gonna put in there is gonna need special electrical, it's gonna need special plumbing, it's gonna need a floor drain, it's gonna, there's
Right.
grease trap, I mean, it goes on and on. The kitchen
Yep.
itself is a project.
I was just gonna say, we also have to keep in mind that if this site is gonna be an alternate emergency center, then it does need to have the professional kitchen, and if people are there.
Right. Well, and that's,
Have we determined?
but that would come, we have not determined that. That is something that's still up for conversation, but either way, you're not going to be able, in that way, you're actually, I don't think you would increase your capacity because you'd have people likely on cots in the multi-purpose room, like half with cots and half for dining. So it's not like you suddenly would be able to put 1,000 people in
Right.
there. You're still going to have to work within the existing space and stuff. So but that's a good.
But in terms of shower and freezer capacity and food storage and all the rest of it, I think that the shelter would be.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's.
And
that's a
again,
good
I'm
question.
not prejudging whether or not it should or shouldn't be, but I mean, there may be money available for the,
And it's,
if it is.
I understand that Ayer has a shortage in that area. So, I mean, if we, all I'm saying is, in order to get this thing passed too, and we're looking to convince the citizens of Ayer to vote for it, the more we can say, and it's going to also serve as this, and it's going to serve as that, that might help us.
Right, and if there are grants for emergency shelter
Yeah,
things or, other town monies.
Right.
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. All right.
Kitchen, big deal.
Do it.
He said kitchen's a big deal.
Yeah, well, yeah. All right, so group toilets and companion toilet. So group toilets, as we discussed in depth at the last meeting, it means your standard bathroom with multiple stalls in it. One for men and one for women. And then line 18 is the companion toilet, which is one larger handicapped accessible restroom that if you need assistance, there's plenty of space for two people to be in there. His designs all include sort of a walk-in fiberglass shower. They were fiberglass, weren't they? Yeah, like a molded.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which my anecdotal understanding is that if we were to use it if we were to try to use the building as a shelter, we would need more than one. You would need one designated for men and one designated for women, or just two options. You couldn't have just one. I would need to look into those what are the shelter requirements just as they are, and then what are the shelter requirements to get funding to contribute. They may be different. Might be an avenue we go down, may not be. I mean, he has sold that shower as a place where people can clean themselves up if they have an accident. I don't like that idea. We're catering to largely independent older adults.
Yeah.
We don't have.
Kathy said they had never used it.
Right.
for
If you
that
don't
at
have
all.
towel service and stuff, and I think, accidents happen, but most people are going to want to go home in that situation, and they're not going to resolve it in the senior center. But
So you're thinking that we might not need that?
I think we should have it. I definitely think we should have one, if not two.
I mean, to me, it's sort of like the billiard table: do none or do two, because I don't know what one does. One doesn't get us to shelter eligibility, and
You
You know what I'm saying?
can put a shower in each of the group toilets.
yeah, but I mean, we could certainly do that.
Just
Yeah.
put it within
I'm sorry, shelter eligibility is 2?
I would have to look into
Oh,
it,
you
but
don't know that.
anecdotally, so I've been sitting in on the CERT team, the disaster response team with police and fire and DPW, and just anecdotally as part of that conversation, they were saying you have to have at least 2. So I would want to go back and look at pieces of paper that say that to determine that, but that was my anecdotal understanding.
What is a housekeeping at this would be a housekeeping project, this building?
Well, yeah, we definitely need a housekeeper, yes.
Okay,
Maintenance, yes. So the town has a facilities,
okay. So
they have a facilities manager and a custodian now, and so that this would become an additional property. We have a housekeeper at the senior center now, but this would become of a scope much
Because
too
when you
large.
put, bigger toilets and all that, it's gonna take some work to keep it clean.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, yep.
All right, so we're gonna stick with the one companion toilet, is that what you like, Helen?
Well, you're gonna research, I mean, at some point, we have to make a decision. Is this going to be an emergency shelter option, or it's not? Because if it is, we have to meet the requirements for that,
Okay.
right?
Would you like me to reach out to representatives of the CERT team?
Yeah,
Or do you want to, what were you going to make a motion about?
That it not include that
that it not include what?
emergency shelter, that we're concentrating as a senior center project and the other is beyond our scope.
Yeah, but I mean, if the
It's a
town
scope
is
that we don't
short,
have, we don't have experience with, I don't understand it.
well, we don't
I
have
can't bring anything
experience
to the
with a
table
lot of
for
this,
that.
with fitness equipment either, but, if the town is short emergency, resources, okay? And we know the way that climate change is going right now, anything could happen. So I don't know how much more it would cost us to make it, meet the requirements and kind of get 2 for 1 out of that.
There's no 2 for 1 anywhere.
Yeah, so I think that first we need to determine what the requirements of an emergency shelter are, obviously. And secondly, understand, does Ayer need more or how many more emergency, like under what circumstances is an emergency, I've lived here 20 years almost. And to the best of my knowledge, there has never been an emergency such that people had to shelter in a public building.
Don't you just go to the school?
Well, that's the point, is that the school, it would be the secondary.
That's where the money is. That's where all the money is, in the school buildings. That's where all the design is. That's where all people congregate. That's where sprinkler system, everything's there.
Well,
Parking
our
is
building
there.
would have, well, we would have, we would have.
We had that massive snowstorm on Halloween where they actually
Yes.
opened the school. I don't know how many people actually went.
So when we,
That's
when
what it
we-
is.
That's the only
when
one
we
I can
attend-
think
yeah.
of. It's,
And
because
that's
I
the-
remember
that's the
them
design.
opening the school saying that it was open as an emergency shelter since I've been here.
right.
I've been here 25 years, and I think that's the only time that I've
And do-
ever remember having the school opened as an emergency shelter. I don't know when we got there, because the roads were all,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't know how many people used it.
For the sake of moving the conversation on this particular, because I don't think we can solve this around the table, would it be okay if I speak with the town manager's office and the CERT team to get maybe a status on if they want to have an official statement and if they would like to advocate? Do you see what I'm saying? Like to say, do they need this? Would they want to advocate for it?
like,
And do you see what I'm saying? Like, so that it wouldn't be us trying to guess it or figure
well, I
it
have a
out.
question.
Yeah.
Why does it say 3?
Where?
It says quantity 3. Does that mean he's having 3 companion toilets with showers? Because it says occupancy NA, and then quantity is 3. So does that mean there's 3 of these in the building?
No, it's just saying that 3 people can fit in it at 70 square feet. It's
Well, that
just a
would be
mathematical
occupancy,
thing.
that would not be quantity.
Yeah.
Because all the other ones, it's like there's one room,
Yeah,
It says
then you get
group
down here, there's
toilet,
4
4.
toilets,
I would
3
pay-
3,
Yeah,
that's just him.
2 janitor's closets,
We
2
should
classroom
have to
storage, 2
clarify that.
exterior. So
numbers are-
I'm interpreting that
yeah.
he means that he's putting 3 somewhere in the building.
No, it's not.
Going back to,
He's not putting one in.
I'll.
It just
there
says
was-
it right there.
There was definitely a group toilet, a set of group toilets upstairs and downstairs. That's how you get to the 4 for the group toilets. There is, I believe, oh, did we lose our?
We went over our hour.
No, I had it scheduled
It's
till
8 o'clock.
9:30.
No, I just think the person logged off.
Oh.
Oh, okay. So then I think there was a staff companion, like a companion bathroom outside, but not one with a shower. I'd have to look back and see, but I'm making a list of questions
That
to
is
follow
a
up.
good question.
We said, there's only one.
One with the shower,
Then
for
why does
sure.
it say 3?
Because this guy made a mistake. He's
All
not
right.
perfect.
He never makes mistakes.
No, believe me. We are going to see a lot of
I've heard
mistakes.
it.
Before this is done,
Anyway.
before this is done, we will find a lot of
Can I
mistakes
say that out loud?
over and over again. He's just trying to, all he's trying to do is get it to 210. He doesn't care about the stuff in between, really. He's trying
Because
to,
the 3 times 70,
that's 210.
210.
So,
Yeah, I just go with a
I
210.
just wanted to point out that if we follow the schedule, our next meeting will be with fire chief, police chief, building, all the people who would be concerned if we want this to be an emergency shelter.
Can I clarify that, Ms.?
Yeah.
That's not the point of the meeting.
Right,
Point of
I
the-
understand.
We're meeting right now only on the land study, not on the final design. So when we meet with them, I think they're talking about public safety to get to the location rather than the design.
Okay.
That's my interpretation of where we are right now, because we're not in that stage yet. We're not building the building yet. We're trying to go through a land survey, all
Okay.
that stuff.
So when I'm looking at, this is Wilbraham's floor plan. They have outside the staff area, like the main hallway, they have the men's and women's group toilet. And then tucked kind of next to the elevator is an ADA restroom on the first floor, not with a shower. And then on the second floor, there's the group one, the set of group, and then the one with the showers on the second floor. So that's,
It's off to the right.
yeah.
Well,
But
off to the
I'll
left.
clarify that with him. Lobby vestibule, which I think is just the main hallway in where the information center is. That I see as flowing kind of all with the cafe and the reception desk area and the lounge and library, but that adds up to a lot of square feet for sure. And then in terms of the storage area, I see a nice sized janitor's closet, that's important. 500 square feet for storage in the multi-purpose room.
That's
100.
because you've got all the tables and chairs.
Right, right. Then, and we had said that that could be divided up into 2 rooms. I definitely want there to be enough storage in there. Like I've said before, I've played Tetris with tables and chairs before, and it's not fun.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And then arts and crafts, one large, and he was saying he doesn't really like to put doors on them. He likes them to be kind of alcoves so that they're welcoming for the different groups that are meeting to go in and get their stuff. And if you've got a tub or whatever, you don't want to have to deal with opening a door while you've got it in your hand. The classroom storage has 2 closets because that's the room that is divided.
There's a math error right there too, because 75 times 2 is not 300,
Yeah, I
it's only
told you, it's just
150.
a mistake.
Good catch.
You found another one.
I'm surprised the software isn't doing those calculations, right?
It's because he's mixing text with.
Well, but there might be 4
Numbers.
of them. If there's 4 classroom storage, then that suddenly becomes correct if the formula is based off of, yeah. I don't know. Exterior storage, I think that one was when he was talking about the need to not leave your ice and sand buckets in the vestibule. And then the mechanical area, which is that.
It's kind of odd that if it's
Only 300.
exterior to the building, why did he count it in as square footage?
So
Well, no, because it's an exterior door into a room where you can store your stuff.
Got
Is
it.
how he explained it, not like it's a shed outside. It's part of the
Someplace near the-
building, so you just come in,
Someplace near the
store all your
vestibule.
shovels and all your rakes and all your
Yeah.
Yeah.
equipment without having a
Cool.
storage shed.
So, and
It was. Yeah, it was. In this one, you can see here, like if
No, I
this is
understand.
Wilbraham, it's here. Like
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
the main door
I got
in,
it.
and it opens
Right
over
near the
here.
door.
Yeah, yeah. That seems
Is
like a good
there
idea.
do we need an audio-visual storage room or anything?
well, I was just about to.
Wow,
Because I know in
Sudbury.
Andover, there was a computer room which had all the servers in it. I don't know if he's linking that in with the mechanical area, because it was upstairs. But don't we need that?
Well, that's, we briefly touched on it last time. as I understand it, Mr. Catlin is kind of punting on the IT infrastructure, AV infrastructure portion of the design. That is-
Right.
So he doesn't see himself as being the one who will be driving that process. I reached out to some other senior centers and asked them specifically over the last couple of days, what do they do in terms of IT and audio visual? And it's a hodgepodge of things. It's heavily driven by the resources within the town at the time that they're building the senior center. The towns that had a robust IT department that could design a system or provide recommendations about what would be needed for how many people, and they relied on the town's IT department to kind of carry the water on the issues around IT infrastructure. So there would, and for some senior centers, they would have a closet, at least a closet, necessary to hold the servers and all the rest of it. Others, again, depending on the town, the level of integration with the public access cable people was significant. So all of this to say, I think that we need to kind of have a conversation before we go too far down the road about how are we as a town going to be handling
Do we
the
have a robust IT
not
presence? Not really.
Well, you could use the term robust, and that could probably cover a lot of stuff.
So, for the sake of tonight's discussion, you're bringing up a good point. Where will be all of the hardware that goes with the tech in each room? This closet back here has got all the access to the things you need. I don't know that I saw that. What I have seen is when you go up on the third floor, right before you go left into there's the server, there is a server room, but I'd like to better understand that when we hire a tech consultant or whoever that's going to be, because if you need to feed a DVD in that's getting projected from the ceiling projector onto your big screen, you don't want to run to the third floor in order to put the DVD in and come back again. So
So for clarification, there was a server room on the...
there was, yeah,
There was,
at the
I
top.
remember.
It was a separate room at the
Okay.
that landing at the third floor where she unlocked that door. There was another door up there. That's not in my floor plan. I didn't.
And there was
see it.
very large, in one of them, Wilbraham or something, very large movable AV equipment.
Sudbury.
There was Sudbury that had the very large, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
where are they storing that?
So
The explanation they gave us in Sudbury was...
That's why
that
the doors were so high
Well, it was one of the reasons that
in the storage
they had
room.
But I
8-foot
think
doors,
they-
because they had to roll the
I
equipment.
mean, they could just leave them in the rooms,
but I feel like they were using either equipment or grant money. There was some caveat to that, to why they had all of that on carts that was moving around versus installed things. Some of the other centers
Yeah.
we went to had 85-inch TVs in every single room to support exercise, lecture topics, things like that. So I do think that's a good point, though, that probably sooner rather than later need to start to understand what are some of those options. Do they require accessory closets, and just making sure, because I don't want to bump into a rack of equipment when I'm taking chairs in and out. It's got to have its own
And the
space.
extent to which, and this came up in a couple of, the extent to which the IT infrastructure within the new physical building is or is not integrated into the town's network, and how does that work in terms of the police monitoring the security cameras and the servers serving the people in town hall? Are they accessible by the people in the new building? That is, the network is the thing. To what extent will the network within the senior center building fit into the network within the other parts of town, or not?
Yeah.
Right.
And how all that is gonna work together.
Yeah. And that's expensive. I
Oh,
mean,
it's
in terms of the budget, it's not something he's budgeting for, but it's
That's right.
something that
Right.
we'll have to budget
Right.
for.
That's right.
Security and IT will not fall under his cost estimates.
Okay, So
Okay.
are we almost,
Yeah.
it's 11
Yeah.
after.
Yeah, you're still on vacation time?
Yeah, really.
Yes. All right, so we have talked about the potential of the equipment rental room. I put that in as number 27. Number 28 was, I really still would love to see some brainstorming on walking space. It may be something that falls off, but I'd really like to see some exploration of that.
And this does not include any of the outdoor things.
Right.
Because they had patios and they had it, bocce ball and all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And how well I know in terms of the multi-purpose room, I don't know where, but having potentially an exterior wall that is, it was on West Main Street, I think, the thought that the exterior wall could open up and you would have additional seating out the back of the building for a large summer concert perhaps, or some such thing where you need to accommodate large numbers of people.
Yeah, Wilbraham had the big sliding panel doors where they have 5 of them or so. They slid and then they pivoted and went back to open up. I mean, it was still very much 2 separate rooms, but it was not a doorway. It became the span of from the edge of this window to the edge of that window for flowing out. So, yeah. All right, so I think, just for the sake of everybody's time and attention, we should probably, I was hoping we would have time. This has been a really great discussion. I think we've really gone through kind of the fine tooth comb what we think here, and we've delineated what we think is important as a committee and the areas that we really want to seek more substantial public input on. I think, unless other people just really want to, do we want to defer further discussion on the sites to another night, or?
I would, but I don't know, are you all?
I think we deferred, but let's just do a little summary again so we understand that we can fill it out on our own, I guess, right?
Yeah. So definitely, the version in your packet tonight includes the follow-up information from Dan that you got via email, row number 7. And I apologize, I really wanted it to fit on one sheet, but Catlin sent it back as a PDF and I couldn't figure out how to do it.
Is that this?
That's this one, but it's 2 pages.
Oh,
Light green.
I don't know if I have it. Page.
It should be.
Second page has Dan's notes on it.
Should be stapled.
On the second
Yeah,
page
mine
is
wasn't stapled.
4, 5, and
Oh.
7. I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Maybe I didn't staple them all.
Mine
Did
are
you want to offer?
Well, the second page, Dan has taken it apart, right, and added 4, 5, and 7 to the second page, but they're on the first page.
Right.
Right.
Oh, his notes on them. Okay.
But he was just,
Yeah.
I think he was,
Just needed room to type it in and whatnot.
Yeah.
no, right, but I think he was also informing us
Yes,
that
right.
his,
This is what he's found.
this is what he, that's definitive information for our use.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, what does the committee think? So there's this piece of paper, and then there's also the one that is the summary. This one right here, that is the description of each of
Criteria,
those.
that's the criteria.
Yeah. So you would want to use these descriptions in order to rate each of the 3 properties on these 12 things. So your ratings go on the first page. Notes that Dan had for them are back here. But
I've got it.
does everyone feel like they have enough information that they could rate this and ask for, and then have discussion at our next meeting? Or, yeah.
I essentially did this for tonight.
Oh, okay.
And I have an asterisk by 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, which says needs expert evaluation. And so Dan has given us to 7, but the topography, I don't feel like I have the expertise to really understand that. Definitely not the hydrology and the geology.
Yeah, just left those blank.
I mean, the views and orientation, I guess, I can make comments on that, but,
Zoning,
zoning is, doesn't apply.
Yeah,
Not even on Brook Street?
No, we can put this anywhere. And these three will all be work in zoning.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so we're supposed to work on this?
So, well, I was thinking we would talk about it tonight to get everybody on a common ground with which to score it, but we are getting quite late now. So, if people feel fairly comfortable, minus some questions, why don't we plan for everyone to score this, and then our next meeting will be largely the discussion of this, and then any follow-up for the program. Does that?
I just have one question. So when Dan came back with 4, 5, and 7, were we led to believe that he was going to fill in 8, 9, and 8, 9?
Not to my knowledge.
Topography and hydrology. And I get geology is the same as 9. There's 2 9s, but whatever.
I mean, 9, 10, 11, I mean, hydrology, geology, and there's no way we're gonna know anything
Yeah,
about
no,
that.
so I'm kind of figuring he's going to, I thought he
Yeah.
was going to do that. That Mr. Catlin indicated that Dan would help with that.
Okay, I'll follow up with Dan about.
We could all take a shot at topography
Yeah.
because we kind of know what the shape of the things are, if you want.
Right, I did take a shot at it, but,
And we can't answer hazardous materials.
Yeah.
He did that anyway.
There are no existing structures.
So
There's pretty
the
much not
results
left
of
much to
this-
do there.
are the results of this going to determine which of the sites we actually do the feasibility study on?
So I think.
Okay.
So I think that's up for discussion. So if we need to do, so a survey will be needed on all 3 if we select them. There are certain pieces we could do for all 3 of them. Or if in our preliminary ratings of them, there is one that scores so much higher than the others, then that might lead our decision to not do it for all 3.
Yeah, well, I was thinking one that was lower than all the others,
Yeah, or
because
the
he
opposite.
Then
even
just
said
throw that one
that,
out.
Right.
that the Brook Street, even, when I saw Brook Street with all the ledge and the neighbors, I was like, this is not, to me, a viable location. And he even said it didn't look like a very good site. Now, are we gonna go ahead and do feasibility on it?
So my instinct would be that if everyone goes through and scores it, and it scores significantly lower because of the location, of the expansion potential, of the existing structures, all those things around it, then that would be the decision of the board to say, the committee to say, do we want to drop that one off our list and focus on the other 2, and then, do more work.
Okay.
And for the purposes of the public, and, I think it's important for them to be aware, or it's important for us to feel comfortable. That is, I'm not sure we can go to the public and say, this is the best site. I mean, it may well be kind of in an objective, committee-driven thought process that we feel like this is the best site. But if we simply tell the town of Ayer, this is the best site for what we're trying to do, we may get pushback just because folks don't want to be given some choices. And how we navigate that, I think, is going to be critical to the success of, that is, these are the reasons why we feel this site is preferable to that site, and we have looked at all the variables with this and consulted with the architect, and this is how we have arrived at this, or how, or not, to what extent do we give the public 2 or 3 choices and say, which do you prefer?
Well,
And how do we navigate that?
I think that part of the point of laying it out and going through the exercise of the program and scoring is so that the public can see that this was a very systematic process. Hopefully we'll have the opportunity to have public forums along the way so that there is discussion and people, and I promise we will have public input so that, people can offer their opinions and suggestions along the way. But ultimately, our job as a committee is to recommend we're the site selection and building committee. So ultimately, our end product is to deliver a recommendation to the select board.
And we're limited with what we can recommend at this point in time. We've had no offers for a private land in 2 attempts. We've looked at every piece of town-owned land that we can look at. We're down to 3 pieces. We could be down to 1 piece very soon. And that still might not be the piece, so who knows? But I don't agree with your concept that we can go there with 3 or 4 choices and say, hey, what do you think of these 3 or 4
Okay.
choices?
Yeah.
No,
I agree that,
Right.
that, you know, I mean, it is true that we need to gain the trust of the people that we're presenting this to.
Yeah.
And, but I think that we can do this through all our work and demonstrations of the work and, you know, and the arguments that we can put forth.
So I mean, that's great. I mean, I think it is good that we make that explicit. So,
Good.
So, because it was kind of all on the same agenda item, I don't think there's anything to table, but we'll save the scoring for next time.
Yeah, no, I'm curious about what you mean by select board update.
Just that we probably need to provide some sort of interim update to the select board, some sort of brief presentation. This is what we've been up to. We've narrowed it to 3, because they really haven't heard anything from us since they appointed us in October.
We have an architect.
So I would suggest that we go before the select board and say, we looked at all the town-owned land, we issued an RFP, we narrowed it to 3, we hired an architect, and now we're looking at, that would be just something very, very brief,
Yeah.
mostly procedural, but also the opportunity to pique the interest of someone who might, pieces of the people in the public that might listen to select board meetings that aren't listening to ours, just more.
When's the next one?
June 4th and June 21st are the 2 June meetings.
Okay.
I'm only thinking, and maybe I'll just come to announce that we're going to start the Friends of the COA.
Okay.
So in terms of the meetings that he wanted to schedule, at what point, I mean, there's one with the police chief, the fire chief, the selectmen, no, but he doesn't mention the selectmen.
You're following Caitlin's suggestion?
Yeah, so at what point was he thinking of involving, or he's not,
Of involving who?
the selectmen?
I think that's, this
Meeting
tentative schedule
10
was
is a
not.
presentation to selectmen.
Right, so I think this is his official meetings, not our work.
Okay.
So I think we need to go to the select board
Yeah,
more than that. So
Yeah.
this is just where he's thinking his official.
Based on his proposal.
I think that's a
Yep.
good idea.
Maybe when we go to select board, we should ask them, like, how often do you want us to report back to you? As opposed
Yeah, that's a
to
good idea.
Us just kind of going, well, maybe they'll say, well, you know what, don't come back to us until you're at this point, or don't come back to us when you get to that point. So then we know when we have to meet them, or what their expectation of us is.
Right, I agree. That's it. So June 4th or the 20th, you said?
21st.
21st. That's a Friday?
the summer
June 4th
solstice.
Or June 18th, sorry.
Okay.
Maybe the 18th, because we'll
Maybe the
have-
18th?
Yeah.
Does that seem, okay.
Do you want us all there?
I think we probably should pick 1 or 2 people to make the presentation, but if we want more people from the building, from our committee there as support, I think that'd be great. Okay. We'll meet before then. We can talk more about the specifics of that, but it's good to have a date. All right.
Did we-
Long-awaited public opinion. Public input. Any thoughts?
You're breaking it down into, working together and everything. I think it's great. I'm so happy to have the meeting here today.
Good, we're glad you came.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for
No,
coming.
it's good, it's great that you came, I know that, jeez, you've been a trooper. I know you've been a trooper coming to these things.
That's right. I'm really interested in it.
Yeah.
And as far as the emergency room, emergency for the senior center,
Mm-hmm.
I'm 79, and I don't ever remember us having a problem in the town. I was born and raised here.
Right.
And I don't think there's ever been a problem. So I just think that, could be a little bit far-fetched for us right now.
That came out of, and that could very well, be, that came out of the FEMA recommendations for capacity of the town.
Right.
And so at that team meeting, it was Littleton, Ayer, and Shirley. We each had a table at the fire department. We were going through these exercises and following the guidelines of you could need up, I think the guideline was up to 20% of households, or I think it was households, could need shelter in a week-long snowstorm situation, right? So, and then we kind of came together and realized that there was enough shelter capacity for Ayer until we realized that Shirley was also counting on the same shelter space at the high school so there really actually wasn't enough shelter space.
Regional.
It's a little
Right,
bit-
because it's regional.
It's just like Little League.
So I think it's an interesting conversation that I'm not qualified to speak to what the CERT team really thinks is a real world versus a tabletop exercise capacity. But I'd be interested in following up, and it may be something that, like you said, Ken, is totally out of the scope of our group, so.
Yeah, and I would see that for a town that's not by the ocean and, doesn't generally get hurricanes and tornadoes and stuff like that. Our biggest problem would be if we lost electricity for a long time.
In hot weather.
Until one of these trains carrying something hazardous derails
Yeah,
in the
that
middle
too.
of the.
Right,
Go to
but
the
I,
senior center for that.
I mean, we'll see.
My thought on it, and it's something I've talked about before, but my thought on it is if we're gonna have an entire building generator, and we're gonna have a commercial kitchen, and we're gonna have at least one bathroom with a shower in it, what other requirements are there? And what if there's $500,000 worth of FEMA money for something we're putting in already?
Yeah.
Right? So that was why I was thinking that's worth exploration. But
You might have the
one of
commercial
nine
kitchen,
people.
but you wouldn't have the stores on hand to feed anybody.
The freezer capacity is.
Right, so that was an interesting part, like didn't learn or know about any of that, like I didn't know that the CERT team has that stuff ready, like it's ready to go. You need 200 cots in 2 hours, it's here, like they'll set them up.
Has it somewhere.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So a lot of those things are mobilized in a really short period of time. It's not like I have to keep 1,000 hamburgers in the freezer just in case once in 10 years or whatever that there's a thing. There's all these state resources. The town actually has a lot of that stuff, things I didn't know about. So, yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, another quick one, and I know it's not gonna go over well with anybody. But I'm talking about to make money to help the senior center and to help everybody in the town, whether it be the schools or whether it be anywhere, a swimming pool. I'm wondering how much it costs the town right now for the swimming meets that they have to do. They have to go to Boxborough or they have to go to Worcester. We do have a swimming meet, swimming people. And a lot of exercise would be done in the water, and you could rent it out to different things, and how much money it would make for the senior center. I know it's a horrible thing to think of, but,
No,
It's a
It's a
horrible thing to
community
think
center
of.
idea, not a
You
senior
know.
center.
I think it's a great idea.
it would be,
no, it's actually. I mean, I think as part, in gaining public support for that idea, and again, it expands somewhat the scope of what this committee's work was in terms of a senior center.
Right.
But the recreation department and the schools, those two entities within the town would need to be the ones kind of driving that bus, in my view. That is, to the extent that the schools and the recreation department felt that a pool is something that they would advocate for and were willing to, try to fund and all the rest of it, that might be achievable for the town. I think that for the senior center purposes, it will be difficult for us to say to the town, we want a pool for the senior center.
Well, how much does it cost the town
Oh, I don't,
in,
yeah.
a budget?
Sure, yeah.
That they're spending right now for the swimming team?
Sure, yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
We
they
have
go
to
to,
get that info from the
Yeah.
schools. I don't know. offhand.
they go to Boxborough, they go to Worcester, and
It's
it
the
would be
school
just
department,
not
right?
Ayer.
Not us.
No,
Other towns could do it as well, and you make money on it.
yeah,
Katie and I have talked about it, and I don't mean to, and I was against it. And then I
Right,
talked
Yeah.
to Katie.
Right.
And she gave me all kinds of different figures and things that.
that's when we were talking about
It
community
costs.
centers. No, we were talking about community centers at the time. Right, no, and that's, I think that, I've been a proponent of the community center for quite some time. The charge of this committee is a standalone senior center. I think if there was somehow a renewed interest with the backing of schools and Parks and Rec for a bigger project, then I think that's something that would have to swell on its own first, and then maybe come. I'm not. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't think that we can drive that bus.
no, it's,
We've already looked at the land that we've got to use, and there's no possible way that we could add a facility like that to the size of the property we're looking at.
Yeah,
Except on Bishop.
Bishop. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess.
Get rid of the practice field and turn the practice field into a pool.
But I guess there. I mean, That-
Where it
that-
belongs, Baroni Park.
that's a decent question to ask. Are there any models of senior centers that incorporate on a smaller scale? But that's not what we talked about when we were talking about community center level things. So, I mean,
Hot tub and a sauna.
well, I mean, but I'm thinking like physical therapy oriented,
Yeah.
focused things. Yeah, it's an interesting
But I mean,
question.
if we had a pool, wouldn't we be able to put a walking track around it?
Yeah, but again, I think a pool gets us into community center territory. I don't. So yeah, no.
no, and I would encourage, I was visiting with folks at the Pleasant Street Apartments, and unbidden from me, 3, maybe 4 of them individually brought up that specific issue. And what I would say is that if not as part of this project, as part of some future project, that to the extent that the schools and the recreation department advocate for and push that as something that would be good because it clearly would be good for the seniors in terms of physical therapy, aquatics classes, all the rest of it. It's also, in my view, clearly beneficial to the town as a whole, because the number 1 cause of accidental death for children between the ages of 1 and 4 is they drown. So that's so if you want to see that, I don't know that we can make it happen here, but I'm not ruling out the possibility that the town could one day have it. But that's what's going to drive it.
Aqua recreational, the school.
Recreation
The
and,
school just built, so,
that's right.
Right.
could put a pool up on Pleasant Street. The site where the garden is.
Yeah. No more gardens. All right. In terms of our next meeting, I'm looking at the things we need to follow up on. There were a lot of questions that we were going to take back to, that I was going to bring back to Catlin. We need Dan to provide some more information on a couple of on 8 and 9, on the matrix. And then everyone
We can do
needs,
8 and 9 until we actually pick a site, because hydrology, they gotta dig holes to see what's there.
Well, I
He
think.
sent us that stuff in an email that was pretty interesting, you know, what he has, the maps and whatnot, but.
He did?
yeah, I forwarded that on to the group. If you,
When was
let
it?
me
He
know.
overlaid the PFAS from the airport.
Right.
He overlaid, the rest of the stuff is on.
When
that,
was this going, when did it go out?
A couple of days ago, maybe? No, it was the day after our last meeting.
Yeah, a day
It was
after the
like
meeting,
Last Thursday
yeah.
or Friday.
Let me know if you don't have it, I can resend it to you. So when do we want to meet again? And then we'll also have the initial meeting with Dr. Renda to report back on as well. So when would we like to meet?
June, the week of June 10th?
Is Catlin expecting something from us formal before he proceeds with the analysis of the sites?
So this analysis of the sites, this spreadsheet, this is our work.
Yeah.
This is not his work. This is our work.
So Dan will help inform the hydrology and I mean, those,
Yeah.
I mean, there's no.
Right, right.
We have no.
So he can't start on anything until we finish this.
Right, so I think what he's looking for us to do is each of us individually to score these, just like we did the individual scoring for the architectural firms. Then you can send them back to me, I can compile them, and we can come up with a committee's aggregate score.
Okay.
And then we do have a decision to make. Is there one that we as a committee recommend dropping off?
Okay.
You know,
So what's
and
our
then do
goal
we want to
of
proceed
when?
with?
Right. You know, his meeting schedule is pretty aggressive, you know, to get to town meeting. And, you know, and the next, on his schedule, meeting 2 is program and site selection. And he's got, what, 10 before October? So, I don't know, I think we need to meet sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
So,
we need to meet prior to the 18th, you know, so that we can line up the presentation to the select board, or at least kind of, you know, arrive at what that's
Right.
gonna look like.
right,
And this is, what, the 20?
this is the 22nd.
Next week
Next
is the
week has
So do we want to, okay, so we don't want to do next week, it would be what would be the following week?
the week of the 3rd.
The week of the 3rd?
Do we want to meet then?
Okay.
I'm all right.
That's fine with me, is that?
Okay.
6 o'clock on Wednesday the 5th?
Oh, that's my
Wednesday,
anniversary.
the 8th.
We could go out
Wait,
to
where
lunch.
am
What?
June?
I? Okay, yeah.
So
Wednesday
I
the 6th,
think
right.
Dave and Dan were limited to Wednesday
like
nights for
Wednesdays,
the
yeah.
foreseeable future just because of their coaching obligations.
Okay.
Doesn't mean we can't have a meeting without them, but I think we need
No,
Dan
we'll do
at
that.
the next one. So
Okay.
do
So
we,
June 5th, what time? Is that a Wednesday?
yeah, that's a Wednesday. And then I can check that with Dan.
And
June
what,
5th at
6
6
PM or something? Is the room available?
If it's not available, we could meet at the senior center.
Okay.
So we're looking at Wednesday the 5th? No?
Yes.
Yeah.
Does that work for everybody? Okay. All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yay, thank you.